bracket's looking, but mine's a little rough after the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I got some Elite Eights left. I got my Final Four left. But, yeah, I mean, it's been chalky. I mean, honestly, it's got a feel of a little bit of a women's tournament. I think we're used to this kind of in the women's side of it. Maybe it's a bigger debate for down the road, but is this kind of the NIL era where
I think
the best mid-major players just get to the high major quicker now? I mean, I'm watching Florida yesterday with Walter Clayton Jr. hit big shot after big shot down the stretch to send Florida in the Sweet 16. Where does he start his career? Iona. Like, I mean, it's just kind of like I think it's difficult to get even the junior, even the sophomore. Maybe you'll still get that guy at a mid-major, but certainly junior, senior, it's just difficult to get that. And certainly the team, like, St. Mary's you're watching last night, they might be an outlier, but again, they're a bunch of international guys often. So I think it's kind of reality of where you're at with college basketball. So again, it'll start on Friday here at Lucas Oil Stadium. Those top 4 seeds all held through. Houston, Purdue, that is a late one, 10:09, and then Tennessee and Kentucky. That will be the first game there. Kentucky trying to beat Tennessee for a third time this season.
7:39, one of 7 SEC teams that are still alive. We'll talk about that in a second. But Kevin, I want to go back to something you were mentioning ago. Is this where we're at now in this day and age of NIL? Used to be, guys, that the big-time programs and coaches could go to the McDonald's All-American game, and they could go to all the big camps, and they could kind of pick who they wanted to come to their big programs, right? Now, those coaches get a second chance because if they miss somebody the first time around and the guy blows up, KB or JB, at a mid-major, you just go get him and you pay more money and go, hey, would you rather finish up your career at Drake or would you rather come over here to Duke, right? Whatever the case, I'm just making stuff up right now. But I think that's the way it's going to be. And really, for the whole weekend, we had one true buzzer beater, and that was last night when Colorado State finally gave up the ghost.
Yeah, Derek Queen. I mean,
to Maryland.
I know everyone's talking, is it a travel?
It was
is it not a travel? I don't know. All I know is, like, if I was playing at the gym, we probably wouldn't call that. That's just how I look at it. It's and I'm guilty of it myself. When the team I'm cheering for loses, I'm going to go back and look at the ref and slow the play down frame by frame. But I don't know, man. It was a tough shot, and I loved what the Colorado State coach said afterward. He just said, hey, was it a travel? They didn't call one. Is what it is. And he made a tough shot. And so nothing to take away from that March Madness moment. I know we can debate it all day, but
it's a heck of a shot.
It is what it is, man. They're moving on. So what'd you think about the play, KB, and just overall the weekend? Yeah,
I mean, that was easily the game of the tournament. I mean, Colorado State hitting the 3 on the other end to take the lead on the possession before, and then Queen, and the iconic quote of, I can't say it here, certainly Kylan will have to have that dumb button ready, but give me the bleeping ball to Kevin Willard in the huddle. Yeah. And then I found it fitting that Derek Queen, who IU fans thought was theirs for so long,
hitting
it over the Purdue transfer and Ethan Morton, which, again, if you're Morton, I don't know if you can play better defense. Granted,
you can.
There's about 6 inches you're giving up there, and I mean, what a shot by Queen. Not a travel. I don't know. I mean, nobody from Colorado State reacts like it. That's
what I was gonna say.
Like it should have been a travel.
Yeah, right.
I didn't think it was a travel. I was rooting for Colorado State. So.
And I was kind of waiting for that moment. Like BYU-Wisconsin late Saturday night was a great game.
Yeah.
Tanji had a chance there late to send the game in overtime. Again, I thought Florida-UConn Sunday was a great game. But I didn't, we hadn't had, certainly the buzzer beater. I don't even know if we had the Colorado State shot before the Derek Queen, fade away off the glass yet. So I was just thrilled that we finally got that sort of game. Because I felt like so far through the tournament, I hate to sound like old man getting off my lawn, but we hadn't gotten the madness.
Yeah.
And I think you can get the madness in 2 ways. You can have Cinderella, or you can have a bunch of buzzer beaters.
Yeah.
Or even not even buzzer beaters. I'm just talking like final 30 seconds, boom, you hit a shot to take the lead. And I felt like we hadn't gotten that yet. So selfishly, and I do have Maryland in the Final Four, so I was very happy about that. But selfishly, I was just glad that we finally got a great game.
It was really good. Dan, we'll go over everything that happened over the weekend. Big weekend for the Pacers. They continue their little run here. We'll talk about that. They come back home tonight. Give you all the details there. We're coming to you live from the Hubler Automotive Group, drivehubler.com studios. And we are ready to go for a Monday and a big week ahead, especially over at Lucas Oil. Hang tight.
Well, if you're Houston, I know no one wants to feel sorry for Kelvin Sampson, but you're like, wait a minute, we're the 1 seed, and I got 3 drivable teams in the regional, including Purdue, 65 miles away.
Big boy basketball. Let's go.
A little different there for some other 1 seeds, but nonetheless, again, that'll be Friday night. Purdue, a 7.5-point underdog coming up, and it is the lowest over-under of any game in the Sweet 16. So not expecting a high-scoring affair at all here from those in Vegas.
On a different note, when it comes to college basketball, can I mention that it's Mike Woodson's birthday?
Wow.
Happy birthday, Woody.
67.
How about that?
Go get it.
There you go.
You fans will be celebrating that in full force.
Yeah, for many different reasons.
All right, let's check out the Indiana Pacers. They've won 4 straight. They got a win on Saturday night. Again, second time in less than a week against the Nets. Tyrese Halliburton was back after sitting out with a bad back. He had 16 and 12. Also, Pascal Siakam down the stretch. He had 26 points, but he took over when it looked like they were going to give up a 20-point lead. He kind of held serve for him at the end there.
Yeah, all they do is just stress people out these days and find a way to win. I keep saying they can't win like this, but they do, and it counts in the standings, and it's such a big, stretch for this team. But, man, the manner in which they're winning these games just gives me so much anxiety going into the last stretch of the season and the postseason, because you don't want to be playing like this, but you also don't want to lose. And so it's a weird trade-off, KB.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're playing with fire, and I think Rick Carlisle has acknowledged that. Certainly after these games, Saturday night was the flip of it, though. Like Saturday night, they had the lead against a lowly opponent and were unable to hold on to it for long stretches there before they were finally able to put the Nets away. And then tonight, could they be catching an injury break? Anthony Edwards, right thumb laceration. I don't know if he cut himself, getting some fruit out, but nonetheless, he is questionable for tonight. So. You would think the Timberwolves would have this game circled a bit. Again, they are still trying to play to get out of the play-in out west, but that is a big injury for tonight. So Pacers T-Wolves, 7 o'clock over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Matherin is questionable, I think an ankle injury for him.
12 games remaining on the schedule. Pacers a full game advantage on the Bucks. 2 games over the Pistons. So right now it's the Pacers in 4th, Bucks in 5th, Pistons in 6th.
Big week for them. I know they have Minnesota tonight, and I believe the Lakers on Wednesday. So, you have a chance to stack some wins against some playoff caliber teams and continue to position yourself for the playoff. But again, I would say some Pacers fans would just like not to be stressed out in the last minute of the game. That's all.
All right. Also, the high school boys 4A. It'll be Fishers and Jeffersonville on Saturday night. Crispus Attucks will take on South Bend St. Joseph in the 3A game. University makes it all the way to the championship game in 2A. They're having a terrific year. They'll take on Manchester. And in the 1A, Clinton Perry against Orleans. It's going to be a great Saturday. Looking forward to it big time.
Yeah, I think 3A is outstanding. I know a lot of people obviously point to the 4A game, but South Bend St. Joe's can score a lot.
They put up 115.
Yeah, in their morning semi-state, and they still were north of 80 in their championship game there. So they actually have, I think, some familiarity on their roster. Micah Shrewsbury's son is on that team. They have another little brother of a Notre Dame player on that team. So I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, Crispus Attucks, I think a lot of people feel like if they were in 4A, they might be making a run right there with the Fishers in Jeffersonville. But certainly the run that Fishers continues to have. And really, they haven't been tested since the sectional. And for Jeffersonville to come up to Newcastle, take care of 2 Indy opponents, you don't see that very often. So Trey Singleton, the Northwestern recruit. I think 3A and 4A, both of those games should be outstanding coming up on Saturday night.
Going to be a lot of fun. IndyCar yesterday in Thermal, California. Alex Palou gets the win. In NASCAR, Kyle Larson holds off a late charge and wins at Homestead. And the Indiana women, I wanted to talk about them real quick too, Kevin. They had a 1-point lead over South Carolina at halftime, and then South Carolina just kind of wore them down. South Carolina, I think they have 1 loss in the last 4 NCAA tournaments.
A valiant effort, certainly from Terry Moran's bunch there. They got it to be a little bit more of a lower scoring game. And had the lead at the end of the first, had the lead at halftime. But late third quarter, South Carolina made that push there. Shout out to the Notre Dame women. Pretty dominant weekend for them in South Bend. So they are the lone state of Indiana rep to make it to the Sweet 16. We did talk a lot last week about Ball State. They lost to Ole Miss in the opening round. Ole Miss actually advanced to the Sweet 16. So there's your rundown from a women's tournament standpoint there. Notre Dame TCU coming up in the Sweet 16. Notre Dame actually lost to TCU earlier this season.
All right, busy show today. We'll talk a lot of college basketball and the NBA, as Kevin talked about. The Minnesota Timberwolves trying to deal with an injury to their best player. We'll tell you all about that as we get ready for a game over at the Fieldhouse tonight. Along with James Boyd, Kevin Bowen, I'm Jeff Rickard, and Kylene Talley is in charge of everything today. So we got to dig that.
I mean, she's running the show, so
That's what she does.
I'm all with it.
It's all coming to you live from the DriveHubler.com studios. We continue next on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan. I don't mind this Monday. There's a lot to talk about. A lot of big college basketball games, high school basketball games, even the Pacers. That's what we do here in Indiana, KB. It's basketball, and you got Pacers, you got Purdue, you've got state championships. Like, this is heaven. This is heaven.
So to map out this week here, again, Pacers will be at home tonight. It is maybe the Anthony Edwards-less T-Wolves. He's questionable for tonight. You've got the Lakers. LeBron is back. You've got the Lakers coming up on Wednesday. Then they'll hit the road. They'll go back-to-back Wizards Thursday. And then they'll travel to take on OKC on Saturday. And then Friday, Saturday is obviously when we've got the other action here. Lucas Oil Stadium. And Purdue fans, you probably were dead asleep last night when it was announced, and I hope you won't be dead asleep on Friday when your team plays. But it is the second game at Lucas Oil Stadium. And so that is an approximate tip at 10:09. If we know anything about these NCAA tournament games, that game ain't tipping at 10:09. So start brewing the coffee and injecting it into your veins now. Purdue is going to be the late one on Friday. And then, of course, we'll crown 4 champions over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse coming up on Saturday. For those that care, I know Purdue fans are like, hey, let's just take care of business Friday night. I want to say the Sunday games typically are like a 2:30 and a 5 if you were to get to the Elite Eight. But we'll have to overcome one of the bigger spreads in the Sweet 16. Purdue right now a 7.5-point underdog against Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars.
Well, I think the one thing that they have coming into this game and this hopefully 2 games at Lucas Oil, JP, this is not a team that I think felt particularly good about itself about 3 weeks ago. They had really struggled. They were losing games back to back. They just weren't clicking. They were being out-rebounded. There were size problems that they had. And it feels like they've tapped into something over the last couple of weeks. And I know they're a big underdog now against Houston, but I think they probably feel a lot more like the team that was expected to do great things early this season than that team that was struggling in late February.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we talked about earlier, they're playing a lot more collective basketball, and I even think that Braden Smith has been pretty good. He was good this past game against McNeese, but it wasn't like they needed him to be Superman, which was a compliment to the rest of the guys who stepped up. Like I said, TJ Cox had some big shots. Miles Colvin continues to play pretty well. I know Cam Heidi didn't have like a huge game, but that's kind of the theme of this past game for them. They came out and blitzed McNeese, and then, Trey Kaufman-Wren, I think, obviously led the way, but just collectively, he had 22. TJ Cox had 11. Braden had 10. Fletcher Loyer had 15. So when you have that kind of balance, you're able to have sustained success. And then now I think you're going to need that balance even more against a Houston team that will probably not allow one person to beat them like they haven't in the last, 3 to 4 years. This is a team that's been loaded with talent. They've been a number 1 seed, I believe, a few of the last few seasons. So it's going to be a big test for them, and, I mean, that's what you sign up for when you get to this point in the tournament. No easy games left, if there were any before. So, and also to the crowd that's like, oh, they didn't play anybody. Who cares? You can only play who's in front of you. They earned the 4 seed, took care of business against High Point. It's not their fault that McNeese, upset a team in advance, so they took care of business against them too. So all that narrative about, oh, they didn't play anybody to get here, don't care. We're in the Sweet 16.
Well, again, and you just hit on it. You earned the 4 seed, so you earned the right to, if these upsets do happen, to have an easier path. And, obviously you say that in quotes, tell that to Clemson, who scored, 13 points in the opening half.
That was brutal to watch.
Against McNeese. So I thought a couple things from Saturday. Certainly Purdue was surgical, really, in the first half. I thought Fletcher Loyer finding his groove a little bit, hit big threes to start each half. I thought that was important. Again, since the injury, we hadn't seen that from him. I think if you are a Purdue fan, there has to... You're probably a little torn on this, but if you want to look at it glass half full, you do walk away from the Sweet 16 saying, okay, we won 2 games by double digits, and Braden Smith didn't look anything close to a first-team All-American. Like, Braden Smith doing that for a 3rd straight game is probably unlikely, right? I mean,
yeah, 8 turnovers for him.
I get that it is Houston, and I get that Houston is, I think we said it on Friday, James. I said McNeese was Houston JV or St. John's JV, if you want to think about it from a ball pressure standpoint. Yeah. Well, now you're playing varsity. Now varsity is the opposition coming up on Friday night. But again, I would if you're going to tell me, what players do you trust bouncing back, I would put Braden Smith pretty high, high up on that list there. So obviously him quarterbacking all of this is going to be beyond paramount coming up on Friday night, and the Trey Kaufman-Wren foul trouble. He put up big numbers in each of these first 2-round games. It's not that Houston's got a bunch of 7-footers. It's that Houston's got grown-ass men. And
they do.
And I say men plural. I mean, they've got just the 6'8", 230-pound dudes that you're not bullying. You're not going Trey Kaufman-Renn isn't putting his hands to the ground saying, you're too small in the post.
Yeah.
That obviously is going to be huge. And, of course, Kaufman-Renn staying out of foul trouble.
I'm looking at Purdue.
himself.
They out-rebounded McNeese 41-24. I don't expect them to necessarily out-rebound Houston.
If they do that, Kelvin Sampson might make his team walk back.
Exactly. And then I'm looking at Braden Smith, to your point. 8 turnovers, that's just not him. And obviously, if he has eight turnovers against his Houston team, I think they're going to lose. So he has to be much, much better, take care of the basketball. And you don't want to give a team like Houston, which I believe will create more shot opportunities just because of offensive rebounding. You don't want to give them more opportunities because they're not taking care of the ball. So it'll be big for Braden Smith to bounce back. And that is something I'm sure he'll embrace at this point. He's not somebody that shies away from pressure or the moment. We've seen him rise to the occasion, and rather not even rise to it. We've seen him just be himself in these moments, so he has to be himself again because he's been better, and he's been the first-team All-American, Braden Smith, more often than not this season.
Look at the tournament overall, and there are some really good teams. Houston, I think, is certainly one of them. But you look at Duke and what they did in their 2 games, and I know they didn't play a murderer's row necessarily, but, man, you talk about a team that just efficiently takes care of business and does their thing. It almost looks like they're going through a walkthrough at practice sometimes.
They're a hard team to play, seriously, because they're so physical, like Kevin Bowen pointed out, and they're going to hit the glass. And their coaches,
shoot.
they can, and that's what's different about this team than previous Houston teams. I kind of felt like St. John's was built from that same cloth as the previous Houston teams, where it's like we got a bunch of athletes, might not shoot it well, we'll just out-rebound you, hit the glass, and just ugly the game up and win. Houston can win in a variety of ways now. They can win by playing, shot-making basketball, or they can play the ugly style, where just kill you on the glass and get you in foul trouble and walk out with a nasty, ugly win. So either way it works.
They were 8-16 from 3 against the Zags. Now, for what it's worth, they have lost in the Sweet 16 each of the last 2 years as a 1 seed.
Yeah.
So, obviously, I would think that would be a ton of motivation, but also is that a little bit of a piano on your back type of feel. The Jamal Shead injury was a huge one that, ended their season. So, that could be a little bit more. I don't act like, Purdue's playing with house money by any means, but that is something to keep an eye on coming up. Again, that will be the other game, Tennessee-Kentucky on Friday. So your Thursday games, if you're looking at your bracket, you'll get the top right. That's Duke's region. It'll be Duke against Arizona. That was a great game late last night. Arizona was able to win that Pac-12-ish matchup, if you will, over Oregon. And then BYU-Bama. First one to probably 90 wins that one. And then the West region on Thursday, you'll get Florida and Maryland. I'd call both of those Sweet 16 or second-round games probably the games of the tournament so far. Florida, UConn, Colorado State, Maryland. And then Texas Tech against Cinderella John Calipari.
What motivated you to take Maryland as one of your Final Four teams? I like them a lot, and I thought they were, if you remember, I picked them to win the Big Ten tournament. But what was your thinking in taking them all the way to the Final Four?
I just love the balance of the guards and the big guys. And I know that Julian Reese and Derek Queen made those plays late, but those guards got them back in the game in the second half. I mean, those dudes are fearless. They are shot makers. Colorado State controlled that game for long, long stretches there. So I know Maryland's got little depth, but as they call it, the Crab Five. I know Jalen Rose.
I saw that, and I was just like, what the heck?
I think I like it.
I don't know. I think KB just likes traveling because that's what Twitter told me. That's how Maryland made it to the Sweet 16. He just likes, he's good with the no call on the game winner. But no, I think he
was going
a good
into
point.
the fadeaway on that.
It was
that third step.
Just an incredible
Looked
shot.
to me like it was legit. I never even thought it was a walk. And it's funny when you see things in reality, and then the next morning you wake up and Twitter has a different view of it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it's Twitter.
Well, I do want to ask you all this. So, KB, is part of the reason you picked Maryland because they have a dude? Because that's always what I think. Like, if you're going to be an upset team, not upset-ish, but I know they're like a 4 seed, but if they're going to knock off some of the teams above them or maybe some of the favorites, does it mean – I always feel like, man, if I got one guy who can just get it done like Derek Queen can, that gives me a little more confidence to pick them because he could have a game.
Yeah, I mean, Queen and Reese were obviously reasons why I liked them, but, like, I don't want to lose sight of their guards. I know they,
good point.
Late in the game, they went to Queen there, but like those guards can score.
Yeah.
And I say
quick.
that plurally. That region to me was really wide open. I mean, I had St. John's losing in the second round. Again, to your point earlier, James, I thought that shooting would catch up to them.
And it did.
And it clearly did. And I mean, Florida, I probably didn't watch them enough. I'm going to be truly honest. But, like, again, UConn had them on the ropes. And then their first-team All-American, Walter Clayton Jr., hits big shot after big shot there in the final couple of minutes. So that first game yesterday, Florida, UConn, and then Colorado State, Maryland, one of the late ones, we finally, I felt like, got some madness going. I think it had been a while with that. So selfishly, from an entertainment standpoint, I was glad that we finally got there.
It's Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff. Kylan Talley is in with us this morning here in the DriveHuler.com studios. And when you start talking about March Madness, too, like I am so excited about the state high school basketball championships coming up this weekend. Fishers and Jeffersonville. And, Jeffersonville's earned their way here. And if you're at Jeffersonville, you're not worried about Fishers. You're just going to go play your game, right?
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
Yeah, I was going to say they're not worried about you either. Because they're
no,
30,
Fishers I don't think is worried about anybody.
30-0, but I mean, you're playing with house money. I know they have the Northwestern recruit over there, and they have a chance to try to go do something special, which is knock off Goliath. And so you should have, I believe, a pretty good crowd behind you just because it's easy to root for the underdog. Well, what Fishers is doing, I mean, it's hard for me to pick against them. I won't pick against them because I've seen them play this year. And, I mean, outside of a few tests here and there, especially at this point in the season, no games are even close. They just blow you out. It's not. They can shoot, they can score, they can pass. They're well coached, and this is after losing, I believe, a high level recruit to La Lumiere a few years ago. So, just a well-oiled machine all season long for that program.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett Weininger's got obviously a hell of a squad there. I'm thinking send some of those boys over to John Ashworth on the other side of town for HSC. But Jeffersonville, they have kind of scheduled to be in this position. I mean, again, they were in the Hall of Fame Classic earlier this year. Trey Singleton, who's going to Northwestern, was hurt earlier in the season. They played a lot of Indy schools. I think they have kind of, that's always a discussion. Can they, can the Louisville suburbs, can Penn, can the region team, can the Evansville team just wait till they play the Indy schools? Well, Jeffersonville, again, when healthy, they have more than held their own. And Mount Vernon and LN, they beat both of them this weekend at Newcastle. So that's going to be a great one. And then I'll continue to focus on that 3A game. I think it's going to be outstanding with Crispus Attucks, South Bend St. Joe's. And shout out to Orleans. In the Class A game, they'll be the 10-31 coming up on Saturday. They upset 1A number 1 and 2 in the semi-state round to get to the state championship. So I know we obviously focus, and locally outside of university, obviously Attucks and Fishers will get plenty of attention this week from us. But that Orleans story in Class A is pretty darn good.
All great stories. All looking forward to how it unfolds on Saturday over at the Field House while they're playing. I guess Saturday night is not Lucas Oil, so at least you'll have your attention locally.
There you go.
On the high schools. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm already getting fired up for this game against Minnesota tonight for the Pacers because it's their own version of March Madness. They got to win these games and stay in that fourth spot to get some home court advantage here.
So when KB asks for more March Madness and more fire and more fireworks, just turn on the Pacers. Because that's every game.
Quarter.
It's every game for like the last week and a half, 2 weeks. They just can never do anything normally, but they find a way to win. And so I thought Tyrese Halliburton had a pretty strong game. The weird inbounds pass off the back of Watford, and then
that
he
was odd.
Catches it and turns and shoots, and I was just like, what are you like? Oh, man, I was
just grabbed it off his hip.
Yeah,
almost.
I was like, Tyrese, you're going to be on Shaqtin' a Fool if they lose this game. And so that was a weird moment. Got a little tense there after that shot to cut it to 3, but they closed it out. And I believe now Tyrese has had a double-double in 10 straight games, which is the longest streak of his career. So he's playing pretty well overall. And, I mean, a win is a win, KB.
I want to play maybe later. Kylan, if we could cut that Rick Carlisle audio on Benedict Mathurin a little bit later in the show. I don't know if you guys caught this post-game Saturday, but I thought his answer about Mathurin was particularly interesting in the dynamic of, like, he is, and Rick says this, he is incredibly gifted when you're just clearing out and saying, Ben, go get us a bucket.
He is.
And the dynamic of when do you go to that, and then when do you try to have him on the floor and just play within the flow of your team. And obviously, we saw last year in the playoffs a ton of success without him. But you'd be foolish to act like he doesn't bring you something. Particularly, you would think in the playoffs and the game starts to slow down a little bit. So he's questionable tonight. So I don't know maybe how relevant the question will be for Rick tomorrow when he joins us. But I just thought the Carlisle answer, we can get to that maybe in the 8 o'clock hour, is going to be something that will be very interesting to watch. ultimately come playoff time. And we hit on this a little bit late last week, James, of like end of game situations. Nembhard and Neesmith, theoretically, you trust them so much defensively. You don't see a ton of defense opportunities to sub in the NBA like you do maybe in college.
Right.
How much do you go to that? How much do you try and isolate Mathurin? Or is it, hey, Halliburton's your $200 million guy? That's where the ball should be in his hands. Because, Saturday night you even saw it. What happened? When that lead started to wilt, Mathurin got them a couple buckets again to help ice them with Halliburton back. So it's a good problem to have, but it's clearly on Rick's mind. I thought it was one of the more enlightening answers that Carlisle's gave in a postgame presser.
Yeah, when you talk about Benedict Mathurin, his impact, especially like when it comes to the playoffs and how it played out last year for the Pacers, they missed that scoring punch. They missed that guy who, when the game gets tight, he can go get me a bucket, because that's what they didn't really have. And part of it was Tyrese wasn't himself. He was kind of compromised with the back injury in the playoffs, missed a couple games. But even then, and I might sound crazy, or maybe I don't, I think I would trust Benedict Mathurin to go give me a bucket over Tyrese Halliburton with the game on the line. He's that good of a one-on-one scorer, that good at drawing fouls and finishing through contact, and so and getting angles to score. So all of that in mind, I just think that Benedict can be a difference maker in those tight moments in the playoffs. And so that's why you got to figure out, how do you get him on the floor, play within the flow of the offense. But when it slows down, because it will, they'll scout you. And a lot of the playoffs, and it's like biggest moments, Jeff, is when my guy's better than your guy. Go score.
Well, they've got options. One thing I thought was interesting, too, with that game on the line after the turnover, too. Did you see Rick, for defensive purposes, put Shepard in there at the very end? Did you check that out?
He does. He trusts
that.
Shepard a lot defensively.
He loves Ben Shepard as much as I love my kids.
Yeah, the dude. Look, when you don't make mistakes and you do what
do what you're supposed to do.
Look, maybe I should have listened when I was growing up.
Anthony Edwards questionable for tonight. Again, right thumb laceration for him. Minnesota's got a ton to play for. The Pacers are playing for home court. Minnesota's trying to get out of the play-in, so you would think that this will be vitally important for them, but certainly something to keep an eye on. Anthony Edwards and that injury.
I always think it's interesting when, real quick, they have the injury report in the NBA is so detailed. The NBA is just like body part. NFL is just like body part. NHL is just like upper body.
Upper or lower,
and then
that's
NBA is like his third finger has a chipped nail on it, and he might be out for 2 weeks. Like, what? A laceration. He has a thumb cut.
NHL's best, though.
Slicing up a tomato or an apple or something?
I don't know.
I've been to games where a guy literally broke his forearm and he's listed with a lower body injury.
It's like, what?
I do think in all seriousness with Edwards, right thumb, that's a shooting thumb.
It's a serious
tough.
injury. I'm just saying they're so detailed with these things. I'm looking at some of the report. I'm like, what the heck?
It's good stuff. It's a Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan from the DriveHubler.com studios. And we got a big day for you today, talking college, high school, NBA basketball all day long. We had a couple of races yesterday. We'll tell you about that. Alex Palou winning on the IndyCar circuit, Kyle Larson in NASCAR. Big weekend with the girls, or boys and girl. What'd you do this past week? I always say girls with Dykton, but I know you have one of each. So how'd that go?
Boy, yesterday was such a gloomy day. We honestly hooped it up a whole lot yesterday. Just watching it, we actually watched a lot of the IU women's game. I'm trying to think. We didn't do too much. It was my brother-in-law's birthday, so we celebrated that. So yeah, it was a lot of basketball.
That's good. I now have a 17-year-old that has a driving permit. He went and got that on Friday. We've had 2 little mini sessions in the parking lot of the school.
I can see the hair getting grayer.
It's definitely going to happen.
Are you like the sticker on the car parent or no sticker?
Well, right now we're just in the parking lot phase, so there's nothing that can really happen at this point.
My dad was always like, "I'm not putting a sticker on my car. You're gonna learn how to drive. Anybody gonna be honking at you? You better figure it out." And I'm like, "Okay, well that's how you learn how to drive then."
Please, does anybody pay attention to those stickers? Like KB, when you see somebody with a sticker that says
I stop 100 feet
caution.
further away.
You just want to stay away from them, right?
That's why
give
I'm
them a bubble.
But my dad was like, "Nah, you're not gonna take the easy way out. No training wheels. Just get out there."
I respect that from Mr. Boyd.
Hey, I haven't been in any accidents that were my fault. I've been in 2, but not my fault.
My dad told me.
Are we going here right now?
There we go.
My dad told me when he was learning, my grandfather would just put his arm across the from the passenger seat. He put his arm. It was back in the old days when the cars just had one big long front seat, right? So my grandpa would put his arm on the ledge of the seat. And whenever my dad screwed up, he'd just kind of give him a little shot to the ear real quick.
No, my dad wouldn't hit me while I was driving, but
I don't think hard, but just
Look.
like letting him know, no, don't do that.
this is why I haven't been in any major accidents, KB, because my father, Jesse Boyd, God bless him, he's like, don't do this or we might like run off the road and die. Like that's the comments he was making when I was driving. So, death is, a little scary. So I was like, I don't want to do that. So I just kind of followed the rules and
Did he
figured it
show
out.
you all the pictures of like the gruesome car wrecks where the
I'm
car's
telling you,
all
he-
mangled
yeah,
and
he's
things
a
like that?
character.
Takes you to the junkyard to see them all.
There you go.
What was your parents' tactic in letting
Well,
you
my dad's
know?
driver's ed teacher. So
there you go.
We had the car, in the
Was that
driveway.
worse?
So did he teach you, or did you have somebody else teach
No.
you?
He's like, no, you're gonna be taught by somebody else. No, it was great. I mean, I was driving in parking lots, at a young age with that car, thanks to him having it.
Okay.
So yeah, I've
That's good.
very very fortunate to have a pretty.
Kylan, how about
driving
you?
record.
What was your learning to drive experience like? Because I'm looking for any kind of input here as I set this kid free.
I started driving when I was like 10 years old.
Wow.
Wait, hold up.
Right?
Where'd you grow up?
But I don't know what it is, because a lot of today's kids, it seems to me, watching my kids and their friends, they're not excited to drive. And to your point, Kylan, I was taking the car at 12, 13 when my dad wasn't looking to just go up to my friend's house in the neighborhood.
Oh man, not that. I would sit on my dad's lap and run the steering wheel. My legs couldn't reach the pedals. I wasn't that tall.
I'm looking at Kylan like, how tall are you? Where's the booster seat? What are you driving? Can you see anybody?
I had some planks of wood running the pedals. Yeah.
I thought maybe you were going to say your dad went the Ricky Bobby route, and where his dad just threw a cougar in the car and
Oh
said go.
gosh.
No, we'd take it up a back street. We lived in a country road, so the streets are
There we
pretty
go.
just clear all the time.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, I see like 10-year-old Kylan driving to the
Can barely
frickin-
see over the steering
yeah,
wheel.
the pharmacy or something. I got questions.
All I can tell you, KB, is your kids are going to be driving before you know it. Like, you just blink one day and you're like, wait, what? I was just holding this kid on Selection Sunday when he was born 17 years ago. Now he's got a driver's license permit?
Try not to go there.
Man.
Try not to go there.
And Max got any, like, little cars at home when he
he's
drives or
obsessed,
anything like
yeah.
that?
I mean, honestly, the IndyCar race is one of the things he's looked forward to watching so far. Twice this year, he's been all about. He got his race car track out yesterday, and he was doing it as we were flipping back and forth between that and the IU women.
In a few years, Max's first time in the car, he's going to bring his helmet and his gloves. He's going to be ready to go. To fire it up and get going. All right, more basketball coming your way at all levels. That's what we do in the state of Indiana. Really looking forward to that. Thanks so much for being with us here today. Kylan is in for Mark, who's ditched us for vacation. I don't know why that is, but he did.
Boo.
But I think we got the prize, guys.
Yeah, I think so.
Kylan's in here. We're in
mean-
good shape. It's the Fan Morning Show along with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Jeff Rickard, and Kylan Talley today. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. 12-point win over High Point, and then they got past McNeese, a bit of a surprise, 76-62, and really controlled that game for most of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that was surgical out of the gate. Built a huge lead, and I never really felt like threatened at all. Purdue fans that missed it late last night, it was announced that you will be the late one. You'll be the final Sweet 16 game here this week. That is an approximate 10:09 tip from Lucas Oil Stadium, so I can hear the groans now, and then you got to face Kelvin Sampson after all that. 7.5-point favorite, Houston. Purdue was involved in what was thought to be one of the more high-scoring games of the week with High Point. That didn't play out necessarily, whereas Purdue-Houston, the lowest over-under of any. I think it's like 130-something for Purdue and Houston coming up. So Sweet 16, 10:09, that'll follow Tennessee and Kentucky. More blue, more black and gold in the building.
Blue travels. They travel. I don't know. Kylan, you were just telling me you grew up like a half an hour from the Kentucky border. You Kentucky Wildcat girl at all, or where do you go?
I have them pretty far in my bracket, not going to lie.
All I know is every time I've ever shown up to a first-round matchup somewhere where Kentucky was playing, even in the first round, it's a sold-out venue. They travel well, but I do think Purdue is going to travel well to this one.
I mean, it's right there. So that's a big advantage for them for sure. So I think you're going to have a huge fan. And if you don't, I mean, what are you doing? Go out and support your team. They're in your backyard. This is what we talked about. KB said it all week. Like, if you get a chance to be in the Sweet 16 an hour from where you play on campus, you should definitely be there in person to support that team.
Yeah, I mean, I will throw out there. Have you seen the ticket prices? I'm not going to act like this is just,
What's the secondary?
Yeah, I mean,
hey, you know what? I take back what let me amend what if you can afford it.
Right. That's probably something.
I forgot.
Worth
I've been going to a
out.
lot of high school games. It's only $8, $10 to get in these days.
Because I was looking at the secondary ticket market last night, and the thing that's unique about this venue is, again, we're in a football stadium Friday night. None of these other venues are football stadiums.
Right.
You're playing in the Warriors Arena. You're playing in, I assume that's the Hawks Arena there. Newark is not a football stadium either. So, when you look at the secondary ticket market, you got to factor in as well that there's going to be, 35,000? I forget the exact number when they do the Sweet 16 Elite 8 court in the end zone there. So you're going to get almost double the amount of people at Lucas Oil Stadium as the other venues, which is also unique.
What will be interesting is if Purdue survives and advances against Houston.
Oof.
Let's say Kentucky loses that other game to Tennessee. All those folks go home. You might be able to get their tickets for the next game.
I think Tennessee fans are going to be.
I was going to say, they travel well, man.
Yeah.
But if you're Tennessee at that point, do you go to the regional final or do you save up your travel for potential Final Four?
I don't know. These are, I guess, good
that
problems
sounds greedy as hell.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know how fans are?
Yeah, but Tennessee getting to the Final Four, clearly last year against Purdue, that did not happen. I don't know. It seems like getting over that hurdle would be quite the accomplishment. And I'm not acting like Purdue fans are doing this, but the game ended at like 2 o'clock on a Saturday. So when we talk on Monday morning at 7 a.m., a long time has passed. But do you know how remarkable 6 Sweet 16s in 8 years is? I mean, that is a hell of an accomplishment
happen in today's world.
Pre-Zach Edey, with Zach Edey, post-Zach Edey. Like, that is a damn impressive feat for Purdue to achieve. We don't need to remind any fan bases here locally the last time your insert team here has reached 6 Sweet 16s. It's right up there with anybody in college basketball right now. So, again, I think when you react to a game, like if we would have had a show for some reason Sunday morning, maybe it would have been a little bit more relevant. But I just think that's worth pointing out of, yes, they obviously played a couple double-digit seeds, but still, they earned the right to be a 4 seed. And I also think, shout out to how Matt Painter scheduled. When they see Houston on Friday night, yes, Houston is different. But Purdue scheduled Auburn. Purdue scheduled Texas A&M. Purdue scheduled Alabama. So this isn't going to be that quite that shock. Yes, I think Houston still is different than a lot of teams, but this is why you put those games on your schedule in the non-conference there to prepare you for opportunities that arise in the tournament. Even McNeese a little bit there. Purdue wasn't overwhelmed by any means with their pressure there. So I just think Matt Painter does such a wonderful job in how he runs a program and also how he schedules. And he gets the Big Ten can't prepare you for everything. We need to go out of our way in the non-conference to do some things differently, and I think it's helped Purdue get to this moment.
So in the SEC, I believe there were 13 teams, 13 or 14?
14, I
14
believe.
that got in to the NCAA tournament. half of those teams are left in the Sweet 16. Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Florida, Ole Miss, Auburn, and Bama. Does this mean the committee got it right? And is the SEC truly becoming a deep basketball conference, or is this just the way the cookie crumbles?
I don't know. I think the Arkansas win to get into the Sweet 16 was a bit of a shock, just considering how they started their season. I get it's John Calipari. You probably shouldn't count against them, but knocked off 2 Hall of Fame coaches on the way to getting to the Sweet 16. So I don't know if I can say like the SEC has arrived or they're better. You know, they're the all-time great, basketball conference right now. I kind of look at the NCAA tournament as a bit of an outlier to a degree. But where was all this talk when, I think the Big Ten started, 10-0 in the tournament as well? So, I could see both sides to the argument of who had the better conference. But at this point, I guess you don't really care, right? You want to just keep, staying alive and advancing.
Is Cinderella asleep or is it dead?
Who would your Cinderella be of all these teams?
It would have been
left?
Colorado State.
No. I mean.
Oh, in general.
In general. Like, has NIL.
It's Arkansas.
Well,
I thought you meant in general. Oh,
yeah. I'm talking big picture.
Okay.
Like, are the days of the mid-majors getting it done? Is it over? Or is this just a tournament anomaly?
I think it's over.
Has NIL all of a sudden sucked the life out of the mid-majors?
I truly believe so.
It'd be a quick turnaround because we're not that far away from having San Diego State and FAU in the Final Four just 2 years ago.
This is true. This is very true.
But NIL is only, look at that FAU team. You have, 3 starters from that FAU team on Sweet 16 teams right now? John L. Davis with Arkansas.
And that's what happens.
You saw the Martin kid for Florida yesterday, and obviously Vlad Golden there with Dusty May. It's just like, and I'm not saying even the mid-majors making the annual runs. It almost seems like if you play for Paul Casaro at IU Indy, and you're a freshman, and you average 10 points a game, nice freshman season. I'm not saying you're averaging 20, but you average 10 a game.
See ya.
Gone.
I'm going to get paid.
Like, it's just, and again, there's part of me that was like, well, let's not overreact to one tournament. But I do think that's a very irrelevant conversation. I mean, you look at it right now, and again, we have one team seeded higher.
I think
so. We have 2 6 seeds left. One is coached by Chris Beard, and one is BYU that has as big a budget as any team in college basketball right now. BYU's got the number 1 ranked recruit in all of high school.
AJ Demanza is coming there
next year. And then you got Arkansas. And again, like I said to lead off the show, calling John Calipari a Cinderella is like calling Tiger Woods celibate. I mean, it's like, what are we doing here?
Not one of these 16 teams, though, is anything less than a power conference school.
All the top 4 seeds won in the opening round. Yeah. That is a rarity. So
you're basically, will it be more chalky going forward?
Is this going to be?
It feels like it.
I mean, James, I said to you in the opening hour, I'm like, this feels like the women's bracket.
Yeah, it does.
And that I don't love that.
Favorites just win in advance all the
time.
Right.
Yeah, because
I don't. And again, maybe I'm overreacting to one tournament, but I don't think NIL is going to quiet down. I think it's only continuing to grow. I don't know if the revenue share and that might create a little bit more balance, but I just think the days of having the 13s and the 14s make a run, or even like the 11s or the 12s, we just don't get a lot of that. And you bring up San Diego State, and even like Colorado State, those still seem like kind of like the junior mid-majors. Like they're still in the Mountain West where how many teams got in the tournament? 5?
Yeah.
That's not even the true Princeton or St. Peter's or some of those teams.
Big Ten being represented, of course, by Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State, and Maryland. So they got 4 of the 16 left. Probably the 4 you would expect for the most part.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. I mean, you have to tip your cap to Dusty May and his program, what they've done. Obviously, Maryland winning at the buzzer, Purdue handling business, and I mean,
Michigan State was down at half last night. By the way,
and then they came back and just
New Mexico for those that missed it.
Handle business there. Never pick against Tom Izzo in March, right? So I'm thinking hard about Kevin's question, and is
Cinderella dead or asleep?
She's in a deep slumber.
I almost want to say she might be dead because
she's in a deep slumber. She's been given that poison apple, and now I'm going to mix metaphors with Snow White, But
Like,
they've been giving her that poison apple, and now she's deep in sleep unless something happens. I don't think she's waking up, James.
Jeff, what are you doing tonight at 8 o'clock? No, I need Jeff to come over, Uncle Jeff, and read to the Bowen children here. That was excellent.
I was like, whoa, what is going on? Yeah, that was a good recall.
You got a little
there,
Mario spin? Max Bowen, a huge Mario fan.
Oh, my goodness. Oh,
I love Mario.
That was funny. But, I mean, I just don't think we're going to see – since the teams don't stay together anymore, it's harder for the smaller schools to do it.
Well, James, they don't – I'm not even saying stay together. Like Greg points out Indiana State here. If Indiana State would have ran it back from last year, imagine what they could have done. That's a pipe dream. I'm saying you're not even going to get the 10-point kid at IU Indy to stay at IU Indy for a second season. Like, yes, Butler going from – you imagine how much Kentucky or Louisville would have paid Shelvin Mack in that second year at Butler, him being a Kentucky guy. You know how much Indiana Purdue would have paid, or Indiana especially, would have paid Matt Howard? Those days, and that is the top of the mountain. I'm just even talking about much, much lower.
Hey, to your point a minute ago, a kid that has a really nice freshman season, averages 10 points a game. And as I said, this is a second chance for all these big programs to maybe go get kids they may have missed out of.
Right,
in their initially recruiting process.
If I'm these kids and I'm sitting there, I felt like I was under-recruited. I felt like for whatever reason they didn't acknowledge me, and now I get the chance where they're all knocking on my door. Hell yeah, I'm going to sign up for that. Not to make money. Tell that to mom and dad and what you would be providing for
I was going to say,
so.
it's the question that I always love to throw out there at family gatherings, the Colts media room. Would you rather be overpaid or underrated? I'd love to be overpaid.
I would love to be overpaid, too.
Whatever money I get, we talked about it with NFL contracts this offseason. Man, did the Bears overpay for Diallo Dangbo? Maybe. I want to be over. I never want to be like, man, James is so underrated. No, I want to be overpaid.
Don't you think being overpaid kind of defeats the idea that you are underrated? Because someone was out there saying, hey, you're worth this.
Yeah, but that's the point. I think the reason I even throw that out there is because people are like, man, well, how much is loyalty worth? And it's like, man, like I said last week, you can't put loyalty in the bank. You can put cash in the bank. And so I think that's always going to change the dynamic now. And not to say they weren't paying people before. I mean, they were, but now it's just it's legal and it's so prevalent. It's hard, man. I think we're going to see a lot of teams just continue to just have to shapeshift, especially to your point, KB, the lower mid-tier teams, mid-major teams, they're going to have to continue to spin their wheels because anybody that's relatively good is gone.
Well, you talk about the 10-seed Arkansas and whether or not they are or are not Cinderella. They are coached by a guy.
They are not.
Who knows his way around.
Breaking news here.
NCAA tournament.
Arkansas is not a Cinderella.
You sure?
Not as a 10.
How much is Boogie Flan making? How much is John L. Davis making?
So here to all of your points, these are the 16 teams. Alabama, BYU.
Okay.
Maybe a lot of folks this side of the country didn't really know all that much about BYU.
BYU's got a top 10 roster money-wise.
They're terrific. Florida, Maryland.
I mean, Kanan Catchings barely even played for BYU over the weekend.
Duke, Arizona, Texas Tech, Arkansas.
Yeah, that Duke, I don't know how much money they got over there. Not much.
Michigan State, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn, Michigan, Houston, Purdue. It's almost a who's who of NCAA tournament teams.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, Purdue might have one of the cheaper rosters. I mean, Purdue might have one of the more homegrown.
Affordable. We used the word affordable, Kevin.
Homegrown rosters. Again, much more on the Sweet 16. Rob Blackman voiced the Boilers. We've had him quite often on Mondays after Purdue runs. He's going to join us coming up here at 9 o'clock. James Boyd this time next week. Speaking of big money, let our audience know where you will be.
Yeah, I'll be down in Florida, Palm Beach, for the NFL owners meetings.
They put you up at the same hotel as the owners?
They're staying at the Breakers, and I looked at the prices, and it's like $2,300 a night, $2,600 a night. So,
The Athletic wouldn't buy that?
No, they were not going to do that. They were like, you're going to stay at this nice, Marriott or whatever, 15 minutes
you got
away.
the Hampton Inn down the road.
Exactly. You'll be just
Great
fine.
continental breakfast.
It is truly like, I mean, I'm not that I'm ever like intimidated by it or I feel insecure. It's just a reminder that you live in a totally different world than NFL owners.
I've told you the story before. I've been to a few of them, and I feel like every time I go into those hotels, I'm always like, Kevin, just walk in a straight line and don't get near anything.
Don't break
Don't
break
touch
the vase.
one thing.
Yeah. That's why I'm serious. I'm always like, man, like, should I like a tie on for this or something? Like what but it should be an exciting time. We're hoping to hear from Jim Irsay. We don't know for sure if he'll be there. He did not talk last year at the owners' meetings, but at the very least, we will talk to Chris Ballard for the first time since all of the deals went down and catch up with Shane Steichen as well.
So what do you want to ask those guys now that everything is kind of behaves in the bar?
A lot of it is just, why the change, why the shift? You talked about, being more aggressive in free agency, and you did it. So now I want to know why these guys in particular, because we thought you would spend money, but again, why? And the biggest why being Daniel Jones. I get it. Javarius Ward is probably the best player that they've, acquired as far as his position, his accolades, and him being an all-pro and Cam Bynum. But the most important player is probably Daniel Jones. And so what does that mean for Anthony? Why him? Why is he a good fit? And can he actually win this job, which I'm still kind of skeptical about going into the season. I think it becomes a competition for real in week 1, but could he win it before week 1? We'll wait and see. But that'll be something at least new and fresh for the Colts offseason docket. What
about you? What do you want to hear from Chris Ballard?
Send me a list of questions, KB, and I'll slam them.
I see that. I see the wheels rolling.
Well, James does an outstanding job, so I know he.
When I ask about wide receivers,
you might be kicked out of the Breakers after that. I'd probably just throw one more on there, just like the playoff flavor with these guys. I mean, if you look at 5 of the signings, and Bynum, multiple playoff appearances. Javarius Ward, I mean, seemingly a million playoff games. I mean, hell, Daniel Jones has been in a couple playoff games. Corey Ballantyne, the corner, a couple playoff appearances.
Neville Gallimore.
Neville Gallimore was great in the playoffs last year. Was that a focus at all? I
sure feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm giving Chris too much specific credit for that. I don't know, but that is something that really stood out to me. I don't think there's a lot of playoff flavor on the Colts roster, and if there is, it hasn't happened in a while. So how much was that? I think it's really important to add that to your team. Again, I don't act like that's the most pressing question in the world, but that would be just kind of a curiosity that I would have.
Speaking of pressing questions, does anybody even care where Aaron Rodgers goes at this point in time? Like, is that ship has sailed for everyone, hasn't it?
They were just happy here in Indianapolis for him not to end up here. So
I think a lot of teams felt that way.
I don't know where he's going, and I still go back to what is he, 41, coming off the Achilles. He'll be 2 years removed from the Achilles tears. Maybe he'll be a little bit more mobile, but he's also 41. And I think we take for granted how great Tom Brady was at that age. It's just not normal. It's okay if he fell off, and I don't think he could be the same player again. And personally, I would not go near him. I would not. I mean, why would you do it? I guess if you're the Steelers, you're trying to win now because you just paid DK Metcalf some big money. You got George Pickens over there. You've been a playoff team perennially. You can never get over the humps. Maybe better quarterback play will get you there, but I mean, you see what Minnesota did. It was the right move.
Teams like, you remember when Peyton Manning went to the Broncos, they had this elite defense. They had no offense. And their whole point with Peyton, especially in that last year when they won the Super Bowl, he was still pretty good the first couple of years. But that last year, he found a way to just get the ball into the end zone enough to have a few more points than the other team. They were winning a lot of games, 20-17.
Yeah, his fastball was 82 miles per hour.
They were winning games 17-14. But the thing that he gave you, though, when you came to the line of scrimmage, he gave you a chance on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 to get that first down every time, and that was something that had been sorely lacking. So maybe somebody who picks up Aaron Rodgers is just looking for somebody that maybe doesn't hit all the fancy long bombs anymore and doesn't take the Hail Marys like he used to, but he can still move the sticks, and that's what teams need and are looking for.
Maybe, but Peyton also just didn't come with the headache either.
That's true.
Like, he was constantly professional. He didn't go on the Pat McAfee show, which I love to watch, by the way, but he didn't go on there weekly talking about things that don't have nothing to do with football. So I don't know, but I would say for most Colts fans, they're just worried about their own QB situation, which I believe is a national story. I think people will pay attention to this team a lot more because of the Daniel Jones Giants connection and what it means for Anthony Richardson, who has a ton of pressure on him to perform, KB. Like, he has to perform. This is the year. They brought a guy in to basically take your job. He can sit up there and say, I'm here to be a good teammate and to compete. I don't care about none of that, Daniel Jones. You came here to win the starting job. That's why you came. So, and Anthony, you got to look at that guy and say, you're not good enough to take my job.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones never say this, but he came here because Anthony Richardson has been benched once, and he thinks he can be benched again.
That's the reality of it.
I mean, that's point blank, period. And yeah, I don't blame Daniel Jones for that. So, again, kind of a quiet time NFL-wise, but as James said, owners' meetings, which also is GM and head coach talking.
Yep.
Coming up next week. And then, April 21st? Does that sound right? Is that the start of the offseason program? It's a little bit later this year.
Oh, don't even ask me. I haven't looked past the next week. I just try to get to.
He's just going to the breakers.
I just get to the breakers.
He's going to get himself a cappuccino
Pretend like
with
I'm
a little
rich. I'm
cup.
gonna pop on my free sunglasses
You're
from
going to
the
have
eye
the
doctor.
cappuccino with your pinky sticking
There
out,
you
that
go.
kind of guy.
Hey, look, just because I wasn't born rich don't mean I can't, act a little, act accordingly. So I'll be bougie.
Ironing those khakis this week here.
I might,
like
for
it.
real.
All right, let's check out everything else that's happening in the world of sports. I can go.
All right, the Sweet 16 is indeed set. Purdue, 10:09 coming up. Oh, boy, that's approximately 10:09. So, Boiler fans, brace yourself for that Friday night inside of Lucas Oil Stadium. Also, brace yourself for the secondary ticket market as well. Houston and Purdue, 7.5-point favorite. Kelvin Sampson, I believe his last game at Indiana, if I'm not mistaken, was actually against Matt Painter and Purdue, ironically enough. And here we are, some 18 years later, 19 years later. Kentucky, Tennessee, that'll be the first game over at Lucas Oil. That is 7:39 on Friday night. So very, very chalky. One team seated higher than 6 is in the Sweet 16, and that would be everyone's favorite Cinderella, John Calipari. So things will get underway Thursday with the Sweet 16, and then again Friday and Sunday over at Lucas Oil Stadium.
You talk about Lucas Oil Stadium, too. Purdue, Houston, Kentucky, Tennessee. It is going to be loaded over there. You talk about the secondary market. As far as the women are concerned, Notre Dame makes its way into the Sweet 16. Kevin, tell me about that.
Dominant Sneal Ivy. A little nervous when Olivia Miles turned that ankle late in their win over Stephen F. Austin, but she was fine for Sunday's win over Michigan. They'll now try to exact some revenge on TCU. That's a 2-3 seed matchup there in the Sweet 16. So, yes, Notre Dame moving on, rather dominant fashion for them. Indiana, valiant effort. They had the lead at halftime over number 1 seed South Carolina, but I don't know if it was very similar to last year's game. I felt like Indiana made the great push there late in that game, but South Carolina kind of pulled away in the third quarter there, and they ended up winning, was it north of 10? 9,
I think
10,
11
something like
at
that?
the end, yeah.
So Terry Morin's team, pretty valiant effort, but they bow out there in round 2. And Ball State women, they lost to Ole Miss in round 1. Ole Miss did move on to the Sweet 16.
Indiana Pacers back home tonight. They'll be taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. They've won 4 games in a row. Tyrese Halliburton was back with 16 points, 12 assists on Saturday in their win over the Brooklyn Nets. That's, James, you said 10 straight double-doubles.
Yeah.
For him.
He's been playing pretty well. Could have had 2 more rebounds, get a triple-double. Somebody very harsh grader there. Tyrese, get on the glass, man. You got to get on the glass. You see the over the scoreboard, what's going on. You know how many rebounds you need. Go get them. And so, but in all seriousness, he's played really well, and they've won in the most dramatic ways. So maybe they could just get back to the normal way of winning, which would be to handle business without stressing out the last 30 seconds.
If you're Rick Carlisle, what do you say to your guys after they bring it down to the wire every game lately?
And they blew a big lead
at some
this past
point,
time.
do you say, hey, guys, give me a break? I'm getting a little older here. Stop.
Yeah, I think assuming he's saying the same thing that he's saying in the media, I think he's been pretty honest of like, guys, and I don't think these dudes, they're not born yesterday. They know they're playing with fire. Again, play the game of name 3 Brooklyn Nets. And like, those aren't going to be, the Knicks or the Bucks, whoever you're going to see coming up in the playoffs. So I think Rick has been pretty honest in saying like, yeah, we obviously are pleased with the wins and it's keeping us in the race for home court, but you drum up this 48-minute effort in April, and you aren't going to be lasting very long.
That's going on tonight at the Fieldhouse. You'll hear it live here, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan, beginning at 6:30. High school basketball, man, is it going to be stacked at the Fieldhouse on Saturday. 4A, Fishers going for an undefeated season against Jeffersonville. 3A, Crispus Attucks makes the state championship game against South Bend St. Joseph. University survives to play in the championship game in 2A against Manchester. And in 1A, also very, very intriguing, Kevin. You talked about Clinton Prairie against Orleans. That's going to be a fun game, too.
Yeah, Orleans got a little bit of a, Milan-ish feel to it there. They upset number 1 and 2 in the semi-state round this weekend. So I know we're going to focus, obviously, locally from what Attucks is trying to do, win another state title after winning 1 in 2017. And then, of course, Fishers and that incredible run that they have been on. But I think Orleans deserves a little shout-out here. That'll be the first game, 10:30 coming up on Saturday. And, again, Jeffersonville, you come up to Newcastle, you beat LN and Mount Vernon there. I don't think that's anything to sneeze at there. So Jeffersonville has kind of built themselves for this opportunity, but as we know, Fishers has acted like they're in a different tax bracket.
Also, quick note, IndyCar in Thermal, California yesterday. Alex Palou holds on for the win. NASCAR, Kyle Larson wins at Homestead. All right, coming up in just a minute, we'll talk more about a big week of basketball straight ahead here in the state of Indiana. And also, I want to bring up, we lost a sports pop culture icon this past weekend. Get you guys' thoughts on that as we roll through a Monday here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Talking a lot about the NCAA tournament, even during the break here on the Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Jeff Rickard, Kylan Talley, and for Mark today, who's ditched us all to go to Florida. But I think we got the better end of the deal, guys.
I mean, I love Mark. You know,
I love Mark too.
I love Kylan as well. Hey, it's March, man. Put them up in a bracket against each other.
Switzerland over there.
There you go.
I love it. Over the weekend, it's always fascinating to me when people in the world of sports transcend their sport and become like, whether they're pitching products or they're on variety shows or whatever, they become bigger than what they were almost as athletes even, right? We've seen that happen, obviously, with Michael Jordan, who became this huge global brand. We've seen that happen with Peyton Manning, who's all over Saturday Night Live and every commercial that you see and all these things going on.
He's like a good actor now.
George, yeah,
seriously.
Yeah, I went down a rabbit hole and saw him on Saturday Night Live as the expert bracket guy, missing all of his picks, and Leslie from accounting winning the entire pool kind of thing because she liked the color of the uniforms. But getting back to my point, there are guys that transcend their sports and they become forever folks in our consciousness. And George Foreman was that guy, whether it was through the Foreman Grills or just his outsized personality, all the commercials he did, all the variety shows that he did. Certainly one of the elite heavyweight boxing champions of his time, along with Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. And we lost him late Friday night. And it's just, people become such a part of our culture. And it's hard to see folks like that go. And it was a short illness. You didn't see it coming. But what were your thoughts on George Foreman passing this past week?
I think for me, you know, being a young black man, you learn about, you know, the legends came before you. Obviously, big time boxer, and as far as just black athlete, somebody that's an icon, and, you know, and then transcended, I believe, even just race and things like that as well, because you can't tell the story of boxing without George Foreman. And the funniest reaction I had, and this isn't in a bad way, my sister, who's not into sports at all, she's like, you know, why are you talking about George Foreman on ESPN? Because all she knew was the grills. And I was like, girl, like, you know, the guy had a mean hook, you know, back in the day. So that's kind of a rite of passage, at least in my household, is like growing up, we actually had to read books, Black history books. So we had to read about, you know, the impact of Michael Jordan, the impact of Muhammad Ali, George Foreman. And they weren't like long books, but that was like our like summer reading assignment. So I was always reading something. And, you know, me being the sports lover, I always wanted to read the books that had sports related to it. I'm like, I don't want to read about anybody like in politics or music. It was always like, and they would force me to read other things. So I read about Duke Ellington and others, but George Foreman was
George
one of them
Washington
as well.
Carver.
Yeah,
I want to read
like,
about George Foreman
I
over
was like,
there.
too much of the peanut guy. I want to hear about the guy, you know, knocking the peanuts out of the other guy. So a legend for sure. And you know, 76 years old, probably wanted more time with them. But, I mean, just that era of boxing, I don't know if we'll get that again. And that's what my dad was telling me.
Yeah, I have had those conversations with my uncle, James. Like, I feel like from a boxing standpoint, it is the one sport that our generation doesn't truly appreciate how big it was.
Yeah.
Especially in the heavyweight world. You know, sure, whatever. Mayweather, Pacquiao, you know, like, that was really it for our age group. And my uncle just, he'll tell endless stories about, you know, the Tyson, the Ali, the Foreman, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you know, Frazier, like all of that. And I feel like our generation, George Foreman. Yeah, I laugh at your sister, but that's probably how a lot of people do think of them. But that is a sport that I can't think of another one that is like that. Where, you know, like tennis is still, I'm trying to think of individual sports. Yeah. Like, you know, tennis and golf. I mean, hell, we had Tiger and like tennis, the golden age, women or men, with Serena and Venus, and then obviously the men's side. Like, boxing just seems like, I don't know, it sounds harsh to say, and I feel bad saying it because George Foreman just passed, but it's like dead, you know, from especially a heavyweight standpoint.
Yeah,
of like
the heavyweights for
you
sure.
get these appointment television moments.
Yeah.
You just don't have that anymore.
I lived through those 70s and 80s times, even though I was a kid, and then I was growing up in, you know, as a young adult in the 80s. But you know, in the 70s, that heavyweight division, you talk about Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier and George Foreman and Ken Norton. And then there was a guy from my hometown named Ron Lyle that was given as good as he got for a while before, you know, he just wasn't quite at those other levels. And then in the 80s, it was the Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran and Thomas Hitman Hearns and
But I think they
all
also
those
fought
guys.
each other, though.
That's
the
what I'm
other
saying.
thing. Like, they don't fight each other.
There were two or three or
Yeah.
four series of fights, and we just don't see. We do see some of that today, but it's just.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe Ultimate Fighting has really surpassed boxing. For a lot of people in this generation.
Yeah.
There are people that have no problem putting $89.99 down on Saturday night to watch a full night of UFC.
Yeah, I that's the point I want to make is that, and that my dad really drove that point home. He was like, it wasn't so like, what's the word? It wasn't, I don't know if politics is the word, but like your brand, your image, it just wasn't as big of a thing back in the day. It was like, I'm the best. This guy says he's the best. Let's go at it. And now it's like, man, I think a lot of this, at least in my era, like the Floyd Mayweather Jr. era, it's like you got to jump through 9 different hoops to get a match with the guy. And then when he finally faces Pacquiao, it's like, is Pacquiao still in his prime? Like,
No, he waited.
Yeah,
He was
so
smart.
that's the thing. So a lot of it is like strategic. And I get it because there's still a ton of money to be made in boxing, but it's just not the same. And it certainly isn't the same from the heavyweight perspective where you get the big knockouts and you get the, the big matchups and things like that. So shout out to George Foreman, who will live on through his sons. He has 5 of them, and they're all named George. So the name will certainly live on.
All right, put your IU fan hat on. Who you cheering for Friday night? Kelvin Sampson or Purdue?
I am cheering for Houston because current hate outweighs past hate.
So you are cheering for Kelvin Sampson, James Boyd. Jeff Rickard, if you are an IU fan, you are cheering for
shaking
who?
her head like, are you cheering for Purdue?
I am holding, yeah.
Weren't you the one that said we should cheer for the person in our backyard? Did you not say that last hour?
This is true. This is true. But hey, first of all, don't bring up stuff from the past hour. Hold me accountable,
Excellent
Kylan.
chiming in. Mark Dykton never would have gone there.
She understood the assignment.
I'm about to say, hold on, Kylan. Let me lie in peace.
Boiler up. Let's go.
Jeff, Kelvin Sampson or Purdue if you're an IU fan?
You hold your nose and you root for Kelvin Sampson.
But no,
it's been 20 years. But if you're
should we bring up the IU resume since Kelvin Sampson?
But if you're an Indiana fan, under no circumstances can you root for Purdue.
That's what I want to say to Kylan right now. Look, I am the neutral Illinois transplant where it doesn't really matter who I cheer for. Nobody cares what I think anyways. But if I grew up a diehard IU fan, there is no good way I am cheering for Purdue under any circumstance ever.
The poll is out. It's very in its infancy stages here.
Oh, I got this retweet
We're
right now.
139 votes in. I literally tweeted it out minutes ago. And right now, Kelvin Sampson is winning with 50.4% of the votes. Purdue has 49.6.
Wow.
Thank you, James, for being right.
James, we are very early in this
Let
here.
me put my vote in right now and sway some of this.
James is going with, stop the count, stop the count.
Some of these comments are excellent. How many national championships does IU have? They never fired Sampson. I would say, set the over-under at 1.5. Ryan, not even a question. The answer is never Purdue unless there's some Big Ten tie-breaking scenario where IU benefits.
Thank you. Common sense, man. I don't know if it's always that common, but my dad used to say, I'm an expert with simple things. It's simple. Purdue's still in it. I hate them. I'm an IU. I told you I went to Dugout last week. They had an IU hate watch party that I was a part of, and it was hilarious and great. So that's what I expect more of.
They buy shots every time something win against Indiana.
No, seriously. I was like, am I at High Point University right now? Because after every point, they were literally screaming for a high point, and I was like, this is the most petty and thing that but that's also kind of speaks to where IU is, I guess.
Sports is the one place you have an excuse to be petty, is it not, Kevin?
No, certainly. I trust me. When James was telling that story on Friday, I was all about it.
Oh, I loved it.
Let's go. Purdue fan encouraged? You won by double digits, and Braden Smith didn't look like a first-team All-American, or worried that Braden Smith has looked like this lately?
I'd be encouraged, mainly because I wouldn't expect him.
His
at some point, he
consistency
has
will come
to be,
back up.
Yeah, like he's too experienced. He's too good. If this was like a freshman, I'd be like, oh man, maybe the lights are a little too bright, but. He's been in big games year after year. He's played well. First-team All-American, Big Ten Player of the Year. That player is going to show up again. And for Purdue's sake, it needs to show up again Friday for this team to advance.
And he doesn't want another performance like he's had in these first 2 games either.
You're not playing a Elite Eight game without him looking like a first-team All-American. I mean, he's got to be at that level. I thought that Lawyer playing like he did on Saturday was important. Again, his was the injury to him for him to have that game. And then again, I think there others have got to feel encouraged.
It might not show up as much in the stat sheet, but guys like Heidi and guys like Colvin and guys like Jakari Harris and CJ Cox, those guys are going to be important, ball handling wise against Houston coming up Friday night. The fact that they all, I think, had some individual moments, some more than others, I think is also an encouraging sign. But I'd be foolish to think that Braden Smith is going to look like that again. And I don't want to, I know his turnover number was huge against McNeese. I don't want to act like he was god-awful by any means, but he definitely was not a first-team All-American in either of these two games, and yet you're still standing.
Coming up in just a moment, we're going to hear from Matt Painter talking about another trip to the Sweet 16 and how they got there. Also, Rob Blackman, one of our favorites, going to show up at 9 o'clock to talk more about the Boilermakers. And I would say hate listen if you're an Indiana fan. That's what I'm asking people to do today as we continue at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Boyd, Kylan Talley. I'm Jeff Rickard. Thanks so much for joining us on this Monday. Purdue on their way to the Sweet 16. Talk about that coming up in just a minute. But Kevin, how is the who do you hate more poll going between Kelvin Sampson and Purdue for IU fans right now?
It's pretty split right now, but Purdue actually has the slight lead on this. IU fans, who you cheering for Friday night? Just put out that poll on social, and right
blasphemy.
now Purdue 52.3%, Kelvin Sampson 47.7%.
Okay, so I mean this in all seriousness. Can you explain the hate? I know he didn't have the success. Why is it so much hate for him in particular?
Well, because the cheating put the program way, way, way behind the eight ball. Honestly, put it in probably its dark
Started
days
the big downfall,
ever.
if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that 2008 situation for Tom Crean was hellacious. And it wasn't just the cheating. It was, I think, a little bit of the, guys are routinely missing class. And,
Well, we didn't come to what we just say during the break. We didn't come to, to come to. I love you, Kevin, but we didn't come to class. Come to play basketball.
Well, they certainly misbehaved in a manner that led to him getting fired.
No, I hear you.
And 5-year show clause, I think it was after that. So he had to head off to the NBA. So, and it probably is a double whammy. It's not only that, but then it's what the program has experienced since.
Yeah.
Like, you haven't been able to recover, I would say, at any level. I guess Crean maybe had a year or two where you did recover. But, what do we say? Purdue has how many Sweet 16s in the last 8 years? 6?
Yeah.
6.
And Indiana has, 2 NCAA tournament wins in the last 8 years?
Oh, yeah.
And
Okay.
one of those a playing game? Yeah,
All
again,
right.
I think it's a double whammy. That's where the hatred is. It's, he obviously, and I get people that are like, well, the violations now wouldn't be violations anymore. But they were then, and then you also throw in the fact that they haven't won. And what are they on? This is their 4th coach
Man.
since?
I think,
It sounds like he just wasn't a good cheater because all them schools.
well, the frustrating thing was, the really frustrating thing was, is he'd gotten in trouble at Oklahoma for the
Sure.
exact same stuff,
Well,
and he
fair.
comes to Indiana, and it happened all over again. It was like he learned nothing. Do you remember that, Kevin?
Yeah, I think that was a huge, huge problem as well. Ben McCollum taking the job at Iowa. Was that the runner-up to Darren DeVries? Now we're going to get them both in the Big Ten? That's the Drake coach, Ben McCollum, for those unfamiliar there. And did you see, was it official last night, Sean Miller to Texas? Seems like that Xavier job is always open and has like some Indiana ties, or it's like Sean Miller going back there to rehab his image.
Yeah, I mean, rehabbing images it might work. It happen for Kelvin Sampson, so we'll see.
Texas continues to look for a guy that's going to lead him to the promised land. They just can't quite
And you're
get it.
Texas.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
that's crazy.
the Chris Beard situation, of course, played
Fair.
out
Yeah.
like it did. So, again, we'll get you set here. Coming up, Sweet 16 weekend. Purdue is the late one coming up Friday night. That is a 10:09 tip. Rob Blackman, voice of the Boilers, going to join us here coming up at 9. Kylan, will you cue up this Rick Carlisle audio we teased earlier? Guys, brought this up earlier in the show about Benedict Mathurin and the dynamic around him. He is, you could look right now, statistically, he's one of the clutchest players in the NBA this season. You saw a little bit of it again Saturday night when that lead started to wilt away. And assuming he is going to be healthy here coming up in a few weeks and the Pacers start the playoffs, that question will arise. In the fourth quarter, how much, A, is Mathurin playing, because he's not a starter, and B, how much is the ball in his hands? Because obviously, last year in the playoffs, he wasn't available to you. But this year, late in games, he's been so vital. I thought Carlisle laid it out here probably in one of the more candid ways in regards to that general question. He actually wasn't even asked about Mathurin late games. It was more of, how well have you seen Ben play off the ball this season? And then Carlisle decided to go very deep on the Benedict Mathurin dynamic.
I talked to him at halftime because he wasn't in a rhythm. He hadn't got a lot of touches. And the truth is this, that in a game like the Dallas game or the first Brooklyn game, we don't have Tyrese. We're behind. We need buckets. We spread the floor, give him the ball. He can create. That's not our team's default style of play. But in that element, he's as good as anybody I've seen. And so, that's a real strength of his. But we've got to work at melding his strengths with the things that our team needs to do to make it really work for him and for our team. And so, it's an important thing to understand. It's an important thing for our fans to understand. And it's an important thing for our team to understand. I mean, Because, you think about it, those 4 games that were exceedingly close, without him, we wouldn't have a chance. I mean, we wouldn't have a chance in Minnesota with him getting 22, even though he fouled out. And then the last 3, I mean, the plays in the fourth quarter were huge, but it's 2 different styles. And, I just let him know at halftime that I acknowledge that if he had the ball every time and if we spread it out every time and he was doing the stuff we were doing when we were down in those games, that he would score, he would get to the free throw line. But it's in the flow of our normal game, that's not who we are. And so we've got to work to bring the 2 forces of nature together.
I like that. 2 forces of nature together.
What do you make of it?
He's counting on him. And I think that's why I probably had the conversation with him at halftime.
Will he count on him in a month?
He's going to have to,
That's
just
the
like
money
last
question.
year.
Game 2, fourth quarter. You're down 3, 5 minutes to go. Where's that ball dominantly in the last 5 minutes? Is it with Mathurin or is it with Halliburton?
Is it a field thing?
There's probably game flow that dictates some of it, but James, the unique thing about Mathurin, and Saturday night was an example of it, he can look asleep for a half. And yet, he can microwave it like nobody else on that roster. I mean, Halliburton to me is more of the how is the game going for him kind of can affect the final few minutes. That might be unfair to Tyrese Halliburton.
I think it's granted. I actually think it is fair because we've seen some of the ebbs and flows with him, how engaged he is offensively. Like if it starts early, kind of passive, it might end passive as well. So
whereas Mathurin, I think, is different. Like I forget which one of these 4 games, as Rick points out, he had like 6 points with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and then he goes off for 17 to end the game and in overtime. Like, and that's what's dangerous, and probably it's what has Rick a little bit like, gosh, at times it can be tough to coach this dude because you want to just bottle up for 48 minutes, but you can't with him. But again, what makes him unique is sometimes he can look like nothing for the first 45, and then the final 3, boom, here's 3 buckets, and here's an and 1, and next thing you know, you're stealing a game from defeat.
So here's the thing. I think the conversation should go, or probably will go, something like this, like Mathurin's going to make Mathurin mistakes because that's every player is going to make their characteristic mistakes, but you have to have your absolutes. And is that where you kind of find some compromise? For example, like you tell him, hey, you cannot get beat backdoor in the fourth quarter. You cannot lose sight of your man. You cannot not box out. Like those are my absolutes. If you do this, I can't play you with the game on the line because we need possessions, we need stops. And then does that give you the green light a bit more on the offensive end to say, hey, I can live with, the aggressive mistakes, as my high school coach would say. Like if you drive to the basket and you're trying to create contact and maybe you take a wild shot every now and then. Right. It's like, all right, well, that's Mathurin. But I know defensively, he's not going to lose focus because he hasn't touched the ball or he hasn't scored in a while. Yeah. That probably is a trade-off. But it's a hard one to thread because he's so good when I think he just doesn't have to think. Like that's his natural. He is a killer. That is his natural state of being, and it's hard to change that.
Well, and he's crazy, which that I think was what makes it difficult too.
Yeah.
And so this is maybe a little bit too much in the weeds, but does Rick try to manage his timeouts differently in the playoffs to get offense for defense with Mathurin? Like to James, your point there, if you're nervous about him defensively, do you try to play that game a little bit? Rick is not one. I mean, we all watch him. He takes those timeouts to discuss like it's nobody's business. And so he's not one that's a big saver of timeouts late in games. Hell, remember, he didn't even take the timeout the other night when McConnell found Obi in the corner for the game winner. So this is going to be a very, very interesting dynamic. I think over the final few weeks of the season, Mathurin questionable for tonight, by the way, along with Anthony Edwards. But once you get to the postseason, ultimately, I think the ball will be in Halliburton's hands, if I can answer it. But boy, if Mathurin is in the game, there are times where if that ball gets in his hands, it's not coming back to you, Tyrese. So it's a different wrinkle that could be very beneficial, but it causes, I think, a little bit of uneasiness too.
I think it's all about Tyrese Halliburton. I think he's gotten to the point where he clearly makes great decisions with the basketball.
Yeah.
We know that. I think it's a feel thing like you were saying earlier, Kevin, that Tyrese Halliburton's going to be the point guard. He's going to have the ball in his hands. If Mathurin is cooking, he's going to get Mathurin the ball. And if he's not, they're going to do what they need to do. But I don't know that we
Mathurin's
have
buckets
to have.
are just different. Like Halliburton's buckets to other guys, he's often like setting them up.
Right,
Mathurin's buckets are a little bit like you go throw it to him and get out of the way.
Yeah.
And that's not really Halliburton's kind of MO.
No, but I think if he's feeling it, Halliburton won't have any compunction in giving him the basketball is my point.
No, but I think what Kevin was kind of pointing out is just like, how do you let him be himself while Halliburton is himself as well? Because, yeah, like Halliburton will give it up if Mathurin is flowing, but like what if he isn't? You need a bucket.
Right.
Do you give it to him then? Like, do you trust Mathurin down too late to go get you a bucket over your All-NBA point guard? Like,
And this is going to be Mathurin's first playoff experience.
yeah.
I mean, you can't ignore that either.
No,
I mean, that's
no.
going to be added on his plate as well.
I will say, though, I don't think it'll shock him as much, mainly because, one, he isn't like the number one guy on the team, so there's not as much pressure on you as it was for Halliburton last year in his first playoff run. But, I mean, the guy, he's fearless, so I don't think the lights will be too bright because his role isn't the biggest on the team, and he, like he said, he fears nothing, and he shows it.
It's Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. We'll talk about Purdue with the one and only Rob Blackman coming up next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Indeed they do. Survive. They have advanced to the Sweet 16. They'll be taking on Houston coming up late on Friday night. And the man with the voice you just heard, he is the voice of the Purdue Boilermakers. He joins us now on the Payless Liquors hotline. Good morning, Rob Blackman, and welcome back to the Sweet 16.
It's funny when you hear yourself back. I had not heard that. Yeah, I'm listening with a critical ear, like, oh my God, I hope I didn't say something too stupid there. And actually, I think it turned out okay. So yeah, thanks for playing that for me. I had not heard that actually.
Well, it was fantastic stuff right there. Where is this Purdue team? It had the high expectations early, bumps in the middle of the road in February, getting it together a little bit more down the stretch here. Are they playing their best basketball right now or not?
Certain areas, yes, especially rebounding the basketball, which had been a bit of a bugaboo all year for Purdue. And that's where I would probably start with this team. Really two things. The bench, at least in a 2-game sample size here. Obviously, NCAA tournament, it's a game-to-game thing. But 2-game sample size here, the bench has been outstanding, and the rebounding numbers have just been off the charts. You know, I looked up some numbers before that game on Saturday. I had remembered last year Purdue was one of the best rebounding teams in the country, and they were. Purdue went into that national championship game last year second in the nation at just under 12 rebounds a game to the good. This year's team is averaged 1 rebound a game better than the opposition. They've been +1. So this has not been a great rebounding team. And yes, when you have Zach Edey in there to gobble up, 12 to 13 rebounds a game, that helps. But the fact that Purdue was able to, they out-rebounded High Point by, I think, 21 rebounds. And then I think the final number against McNeese ended up being +17 or 18. But that was really because there in that last 60 seconds or so, the game got kind of sloppy. It had been +20 the whole game up until then. So ultimately what you have is you have a team that's not been a great rebounding team all year, that just went back-to-back +20 games in rebounding in the NCAA tournament. If you can continue to do that, 20 more possessions every game in a tournament-type atmosphere, you're going to be in great shape. And that's one thing Purdue did exceptionally well. And I'd add this, High Point, a top 20 team in the country in rebounding coming into that game when it came to rebound margin. So it's not like Purdue is rebounding ball against teams that aren't very good at rebounding to begin with. High Point certainly was that. But then the bench play, the win on Thursday against High Point, 22 points, 22 rebounds from the bench. The McNeese game, C.J. Cox with 11 points C.J.'s in the starting lineup, but he was a guy that played well. But Miles Colvin off the bench with 8 points in that game, and I just thought I thought the bench was really good for Purdue. I thought the rebounding was really good for Purdue, and those were the two areas where I thought Purdue was just really took it to another level, because there was a game or two this year, I don't remember specifically, there might have been more than one, I know there was at least one, where the bench didn't score a single point. And that was a Big Ten game, by the way. The bench gave you nothing productivity-wise in scoring. So to see those two areas of Purdue's game really take it to another level in that opening weekend of the NCAA tournament, they were a very welcome surprise.
I just love that Rob uses the word bugaboo in his analysis.
It's a very technical word.
So, Rob, I want to pick up a little bit about that bench play. How do you think Miles Colvin's just athleticism and the three-point shooting has helped this team as of late? Because I think when you face some of these teams that are really good on the glass, he's someone that kind of can be an equalizer for the Purdue team.
Yeah, and a guy that necessarily, when you're looking at the scouting report, is not going to jump off the scouting report, because his numbers haven't been great this year. 32% from three going into that McNeese game, yet he's been making three-point shots here in this NCAA tournament. What was it? I think he was 2 of 5, maybe 2 of 4 against McNeese. 3-point
2 of 5.
Is that what it was? Yeah. So to me, that is, he was so good three-point shooting last year. And so, quite frankly, was Camden Heide. Both those guys spent most of the season last year in the 40 percentile range three-point shooting. Both have labored this year in that particular area, although both are getting better. Like Camden Heide's gotten himself back up to 37% three-point shooting. He spent most of the Big Ten season down there in the 20s. I mean, he was really, really struggling to shoot the three. So those two guys, again, the beauty of now playing non-Big Ten teams, if all they're going to do is look at a stat sheet and pull a handful of games to scout, they're going to see a couple of guys that don't shoot the three very well. When, truth be told, those are good three-point shooters. They just weren't very good during the regular season, and now all of a sudden they're starting to find their stroke. Again, 2-game sample, I understand that, but if those two guys can continue to provide offense, especially with three-point shooting, Purdue's in some business here in the postseason.
So, voice of the Boilers, Rob Blackman, and Kylan Talley pulled that clip, courtesy of the Purdue Radio Network, leading us in here as, again, we'll get you set. Purdue and Houston, late one, Friday night, 10:09, and that is approximately. Good luck on that pregame show. Rob Blackman trying to get us all the way there to whenever that game officially tips on Friday. I'm curious what you observed in Providence about their reaction after that win. It seemed like businesslike. It seemed subdued. I don't know. Maybe last year it was after the Elite Eight win where that was the exhale of just like, oh my gosh, we have done it. We have come back from losing to the 16. And it just, me watching it on TV, and obviously the camera pans away after a few minutes, it just seemed like, not ho-hum, but it kind of felt like that. Could you describe maybe a little bit more of the scene that you witnessed? And I mean, hell, 6 Sweet 16s in 8 years. I don't know. Maybe after a while, it does kind of feel like that.
Well, and for this group, I think it does feel a little bit like that because, yes, they were in the national championship game last year. And you are correct. Let's go back to last year. You are 100% accurate, Kevin. It was not until that win over Tennessee in the Elite Eight when there was the deep exhale, and it felt like everyone could finally celebrate. Felt like you could give someone a hug or a high five or a fist bump and actually not feel guilty about it. And that comes with losing to a 16 seed the year prior, right? It just does, especially when you're basically returning your same entire team you had that had just lost to a 16. But yeah, I do think, especially the veteran leadership of this group, which would of course be Fletcher and Braden and Trey Kaufman-Renn, that's really kind of all they know from last year. That when you win an NCAA tournament game in round 1 or round 2, that's what you're supposed to do. So there doesn't need to be a whole lot of celebrating and carrying on and fireworks. You just get on the bus and then get on the plane and, get ready for the next game. So now, a little different scenario, I would say, this coming Friday, because Purdue will be the underdog, obviously. They're the 4 seed, playing a 1 seed. But I would agree, if you're a Purdue fan and you watched that game Saturday and you wondered why there wasn't a whole lot of pomp and circumstance and a lot of celebrating, that's just kind of that's the attitude that the older players on this team have, and that's just kind of how they look at it.
Do you view Friday night of this is why you schedule the way you do in the non-conference? This is why you put –
Yeah, I mean, you look, Purdue's strength of schedule all year has been anywhere from 2 to 6. But, yeah, that's – and Matt Painter has said this for years. This is exactly why you schedule the way you do to play these kind of teams. And, look, I don't know where this thing ends up. Obviously, we're down to the Sweet 16. But if you look at the 16 teams, like look at in the South bracket, the 4 teams that are left, Purdue's played all 4 of them. Now, Michigan State, obviously you have to play. But Ole Miss and Auburn, Purdue played both of those, beat one, lost the other. So, yes, that's exactly why you schedule the way you schedule, to try to find these kind of teams. Purdue played Alabama, who's obviously still alive here in the Sweet 16. But that is exactly the reason what you're talking about. That is why, as I just said a moment ago, that's why Matt Painter schedules the best schedule that he can find to try to get yourselves ready for these type of situations. Now, it's kind of hard to find a whole lot of teams that resemble Houston because they are a completely different animal, especially on the defensive end. But at least I think Purdue will take some comfort in knowing they played a high-level schedule and they can, this is not going to be a surprise with what they see on Friday night against Houston.
Rob Blackman is the voice of the Purdue Boilermakers. They'll be in the Sweet 16 coming up on Friday night. A big field over there at Lucas Oil. They'll be taking on Houston in the late game, but it'll be Kentucky and Tennessee in the early game. How many Boiler fans do you expect to make the trip down for this one? Because we know the other teams travel pretty well. What do you expect the crowd to look like there?
Yeah, I mean, I would just go with all of the teams involved. I mean, think how I obviously don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but just trying to anticipate, especially what Kentucky and Houston will bring. Kentucky and Tennessee. I beg your pardon. I don't know much about Houston. I'll be very honest. I don't know, how they travel, those kind of things. But Kentucky, Tennessee, obviously they're going to bring a ton of fans. And you have, Purdue right there in your backyard in Indianapolis. So I don't have the exact numbers. I've seen a few things on social media where it's going to seat around 35,000, I hear.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine that it won't be, if not sold out, be awfully close to being, at that capacity. So, yeah, that's going to be something. I will also, I'm not a big fan of playing in the football stadiums for this tournament until you get to the Final Four. I understand why it has to be this way with the IHSAA having their state finals at Cambridge this weekend. But I suppose if you're going to have to play in a football stadium and you're Purdue, you might as well play in Indianapolis. So that's going to be the one ideal football stadium you would think from a crowd standpoint. So, yeah, man, it ought to be electric. I'd show up early for parking purposes on Friday night, man, because it's probably going to be hard to find a good parking spot downtown.
Last one for me, Rob. Braden Smith, we haven't seen him look like the first-team All-American we know him to be. So what do you expect from him going into the biggest game of, I would say, his career, but he's had a pretty good career of this season, and expecting him to bounce back against a Houston team that obviously will key in on him and try to keep things a little bit off kilter for him?
Absolutely, and I think that's probably the best news of all is that game against McNeese was not one of his better games. Now, it's funny to say that. It's still 10 points, 5 assists. There's a lot of point guards that would kill for those kind of numbers just on the average, but that's below average for him. He did have the 8 turnovers. Look, Thursday he went for 20 points, 6 assists against High Point, so it's not like he had back-to-back bad games. But I would argue if he's going to have a subpar game, at least in Braden Smith terms, that was probably a good one to have because I can promise you, knowing how competitive he is going to be on edge for that game Friday against Houston, and he will be doing everything in his power to prove that he is a first-team All-American, just like the guy he'll be going against in L.J. Cryer on Friday. So, man, that ought to be one hell of a fun battle to watch from a fan's perspective.
Rob, good luck on Friday. I'm thinking about you more than anybody, trying to get us that 10:09 tip.
Hey, the next steak dinner is on me if that game tips at 10:09. There is no way that is happening. Probably closer to 10:29, probably.
I think there's a better chance Tiger Woods wins 4 majors this year than Purdue tips off at 10:09 coming up on Friday night. It's another trip to the Sweet 16, and it's right here in the great state of Indiana. Rob, safe travels. Certainly, well, I guess you're traveling very far, but we'll be looking forward to the call coming up on Friday with you and Bobby.
Okay, guys. Thanks for having me. Have a great week.
That's Rob Blackman right there on the Payless Liquors hotline.
Listener George called in. We've got this poll going up on Kevin's X account, Twitter account. Like, if you're an Indiana fan, what do you want to see happening? Kelvin Sampson win or a Purdue win? I mean, you're kind of in a predicament there. Listener George called in, Kylan says, with his, quote, unique situation, unquote. He's an IU fan and bought Elite 8 tickets, but can't imagine going to the game now. Does he sell those tickets or does he go anyways? Make some money, get some cash.
You gotta sell. You're gonna make a ton of money no matter what the matchup is.
Yes,
right. I mean, Tennessee fans. Did you watch Tennessee fans and how much they took over the horseshoe in football? I mean, Tennessee fans are gonna travel. I mean, I've made that drive before. It's not ridiculous. 5-6 hours.
All I know is
it's an easy drive too.
If my team's not in it, I mean, I can't put memories in the bank, but I can put cash in there. I'd be selling.
Hey, another listener, a Purdue graduate, called in with a very important question for you, James.
Oh, Lord.
When is IU playing this weekend?
Oh. Wait, does that hurt me or something like that? I went to Illinois. We're not playing this weekend either. They're not?
They're not. Yeah.
Is that just
tough for IU, but hey, boiler up.
Okay, well, yeah. I mean, I appreciate that, but for anybody who is a little confused, I did not go to IU. I went to Illinois, and I get reminded by several teams that the IU fans tell me you never won anything. And then Purdue fans tell me, well, when was the last time you missed a national championship, which was, 2005? So I'm down bad. But I will say, I'm an honest.
I was hoping for a little more competitive effort out of your fighting line yesterday.
Dude, I told y'all, I
thought they were going to win that game.
I predicted for them to be out in the second round. So I will say, I am not one of those people that are delusional. The team gets in, my team's going to win it all. No, I never picked them to win it because I know my team. Up and down, baby, and they were down yesterday.
How does the poll look these moments? Now we've had it up for less than an hour.
Slight edge to the Purdue fans here. IU fans, who you cheering for Friday night? Very simple question. Only two options. There's no option C. Kelvin Sampson is A. Purdue is B. 50.7% for Purdue.
I'll be so disappointed in you IU fans if you do me like this. I want to be right so bad.
It's like being offered for dinner. What do you want, liver or chicken gizzard?
We have a couple.
Which one do you want?
A couple IU fans that have chimed in here. Tom, as a lifelong IU fan, only an idiot would not root against a school from the state of Indiana whose roster is full of kids from the state of Indiana.
Thank you for having common sense.
Gator, there's a lot of good people in the Purdue program and a lot of respect for them. Rivals or not. Can't say that about Kelvin Sampson.
Oh,
that might be the take of the day right there.
That was spicy, but he's wrong.
So both of those are IU people rooting for Purdue.
This is a good question. I honestly didn't think it would be this split when you asked.
I mean, again, you could say Kelvin Sampson ruined the Indiana basketball program for X amount of years. I think that's a very fair statement.
He put him really behind the 8 ball.
So
That's
when you
the fairest
consider
part.
that and you consider what has happened to your program since, then boom. That's where you have it. Speaking of Rob Blackman's long-lost brother, slightly different skin tone, Julian Blackman visiting the Carolina Panthers. James Boyd, one of 3 starters still out there on the open market for the Colts. Mo Alley Cox, I believe I saw. They showed him during the VCU-BYU game over the weekend. Mo Alley Cox, EJ Speed, Julian Blackman. Obviously, with the Cam Bynum signing, the full expectation is Julian Blackman will be playing for a different team coming up in 2025.
Yes, good player. I think he was outspoken as well throughout his time here. Kenny Moore, I know, sounded off last year. Julian Blackman also had some moments throughout the season where he talked. And I think that he's still a good player. It's just that he's injury prone, and that's kind of been a knock on him. I know he played last year, only missed 1 game, but he was compromised KB, and we all kind of saw it. He was not the same playmaking safety we've seen him be because of the torn labrum. And so I think he should probably be healthy or healthier now. I know he said at the end of the season he was going to get surgery on that labrum, but I think because of the injuries, that's why his market kind of looks the way it does. Otherwise, the Colts probably wouldn't want to move on from him. He's a homegrown talent, good player, but again, just injuries piled up year after year.
All right, let's check everything else that's happening on the docket today and take a look back at yesterday as well. Let's talk about the NCAA tournament down to the Sweet 16. And Kevin, everything the NCAA tournament committee could have wanted for this regional final. Purdue, Houston, Kentucky, Tennessee. I mean, they're going to get their money's worth over there at Lucas Oil on Friday night.
Yeah, and again, Rob mentioned it. The court in the end zone here for a Sweet 16 Elite 8, and so I believe that hovers right around 35,000 or so. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an absolutely massive ticket. It's the only bracket where all 4 seeds, the top 4 seeds, held. Again, it's pretty chalky all throughout. I don't think we can call John Calipari a Cinderella here with Arkansas or Chris Beard and Ole Miss, or, I mean, hell, even BYU's roster has got a ton of money in it, so it'll be very, very chalky in the Sweet 16. And just a reminder, 7:39, Tennessee and Kentucky. And that will be followed by Purdue as a 7.5-point favorite. Or excuse me, 7.5-point underdog with Houston. One of the smaller over-unders of the entire Sweet 16 slate as well. Expecting a low-scoring game coming up approximately 10:09 p.m. on Friday night.
A little bit of an Indiana Hoosier note, though, too. We all know that Darren DeVries was hired and signed to a 6-year contract, right? The transfer portal is open. Tucker DeVries is now in the portal with the coveted James do not contact tag.
I wonder what that means. Where could he possibly be going? I think he'll be a Hoosier next season and a great addition to the roster because when healthy, and he's got the shoulder issue, but when healthy, he can shoot that thing and he can play pretty well. And he also has some size, too. So I think he's going to be a great addition to that team.
NCAA women's basketball tournament. Good news for your team, Kevin. Fighting Irish still alive over there.
Moving on, pretty dominant this weekend. They were very impressive yesterday against Michigan. Olivia Miles, a little scare with that ankle injury. She's had just a horrific luck injury-wise in her career, but she got banged up against Stephen F. Austin, but did play against Michigan, so they will now take on TCU in the Sweet 16. They'll try to avenge a loss in Grand Cayman earlier this year to TCU, so that's Haley Van Lith, where she transferred to. They beat Louisville, her old team, in the second round yesterday. Indiana, valiant effort from Terry Moore and company. Probably, honestly, deserves more than a valiant effort comment there. I mean, they had a lead at halftime, and, when you're playing on the opposing home floor, Obviously, it's a disadvantage for you, but South Carolina kind of imposed their will late in the third quarter in that 1 versus 9 matchup. And Ball State, their magical season came to an end on Friday night. They lost to Ole Miss. Ole Miss actually advanced to the Sweet 16. So shout out to Brady Sally. He joined us last week. Really enjoyed that conversation. Allie Becky and company, just an awesome, awesome run for the Ball State Cardinals.
Indiana Pacers have won 4 games in a row. They'll be back on the home floor tonight against the Minnesota Timberwolves. May not have to face Anthony Edwards, KB.
Right thumb laceration doesn't sound good for a right-handed player.
Tape it up and get out there. Your team needs you. No, we'll see if he's available, but we'll also see if the Pacers can win a game in regular fashion and not the fashion in which they have to do something crazy to come back or hold on and give everyone just heart palpitations.
Halliburton minute count just north of 30 in his return on Monday. They do have a back-to-back, or his return on Saturday, I should say. They do have a back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday, Lakers at Wizards, so we'll see about Tyrese for that. Not crazily impressive stat line from him over the weekend, so just something to keep an eye on. He is off the injury report for tonight. Benedict Mathurin is on it, though. He is also questionable.
IHSAA, we've got Fishers against Jeffersonville in the 4A state championship game as Fishers tried to go undefeated. That'll be on Saturday over at Cambridge. The 3A game, Crispus Attucks in the championship going up against South Bend St. Joseph. University has made the 2A game. They'll take on Manchester. And in the 1A contest, Clinton Prairie goes against Orleans. Of those 4, what's your favorite, most intriguing team or game, Kev?
I kind of like that 3A game. I mentioned South Bend St. Joe's earlier. For those unfamiliar with them, they've got Micah Shrewsbury's youngest son, Nick, on their team. J.R. Knesny, who also plays at Notre Dame. His little brother, Chase, is one of the more decorated scorers in high school. And for those that watched Chittard in recent years, Ethan Roseman, one of their better players, is now up at South Bend St. Joe's. They put up 115. 32-minute high school basketball game. They put up 150, and then they scored like 80-something in the semi-state title game. So they can score, and they take on Crispus Attucks. And we saw Desmond Briscoe, the Iowa commit, who's been great for Crispus Attucks throughout their run here in the tournament. He reopened up his his recruitment with Fran McCaffrey, of course, leaving Iowa. We'll see if Ben McCollum taking the job, how that plays into some things there. But that is one that I can't wait for coming up. And that'll be, 6:30, I think, Saturday
6
night?
p.m. Eastern time, it looks like, is the tip. But I also think that game is just going to be back and forth. I've seen Crispus Attucks play in person. They get up and down. And so if you like scoring, you like running, and, perhaps the turnovers and chaos. And, yeah, it's going to be a fun game.
All right, and finally in auto racing, IndyCar. Thermal, California yesterday, Alex Palou gets the win in NASCAR.
Does he ever lose?
Kyle Larson wins at Homestead occasionally, yeah.
I'm like, my goodness. I mean,
No.
like I said, I have been, new to this sport, but I know Alex Palou is pretty good. Analysis.
15 laps to go, and all of a sudden I see Pato Ward's got Palou in his rearview mirror, and I said, I have seen this song and dance way too often. I'm not a big Thermal fan.
Why don't you like it?
I don't know. It just seems to kind of lack juice. Seems to be in the middle of nowhere. All of a sudden I'm watching yesterday, and for 5 minutes, the power or something goes out. Now I'm watching like the NASCAR race. So I don't love the racing. I don't love the fact that all of a sudden I had to watch NASCAR for 5 minutes. I don't like it.
Glad you got that off your chest. I feel better for you now.
Not a Thermal fan.
All right. That's going to wrap it up for the check down. Coming up in just a moment, more on basketball in the state of Indiana in March. It's what we do, and we are busy with it at all levels, as we've just told you about. We'll continue taking your thoughts next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Couple of things as we are in the height of March Madness. Major League Baseball's opening day coming up on Thursday. All 28 teams playing except for the Rays and the Rockies. Some of the hottest must-watch games that day will include the Dodgers taking on the Tigers and the Cubs looking for a win over the Diamondbacks. We are in that time of year. March Madness, Major League Baseball, and Kevin, for you, that means the Masters is right around the corner. Started seeing a bunch of commercials for that.
Indeed.
This past weekend.
Chills. Cannot wait for that. So, yes, always the Thursday after the national title. You used to get the Jim Nance double dip, but Ian Eagle, of course, who does outstanding work and is on with John quite often. So that is your Final Four. I believe Purdue's got the same announcing crew coming up Friday night. So you'll get your Andrew Catalan, Steve Lapis at the company. I thought Robbie Hummel did a nice job.
I think he's turned into terrific.
Yeah, over the weekend. Was that the first time he's done March Madness?
I'm not sure, but I definitely recognize his voice.
I know he's done some
enjoyed
Westwood
hearing him.
1.
Yeah.
And I was actually, Mark and I were texting a little bit over the weekend. He said he listened to the Purdue game in the car and said Jordan Cornette was really good on the Purdue call. So that was from a national Westwood 1 standpoint. So, again, it is a late one Friday night. Can you make these games any earlier, or is there no way around this?
Just trying to put it in weekend prime time for the West Coast, Kevin. It's always about what can the West Coast watch.
And we
in
really
prime
don't
time.
have, I was looking at the schedule. It's like, obviously, in our region here, it's a bunch of Eastern time zone teams. Houston is the Central time zone team. The other Friday games are Auburn, Michigan. Well, I mean, that's not West Coast. And then Ole Miss and Michigan State. So no matter what you did,
Doesn't matter.
one of these games was going to be
late
in the late one, and Purdue got the short end of it.
Speaking of Purdue, they will be taking on Houston, the number 1 seed, coming up on Friday at 10:09. As you heard Rob Blackman say, what are the chances that game actually starts at 10:09? It'll probably be closer to 10:30. But we've been talking about Purdue and where they are now after the bumpy road in the middle of the season and kind of getting it together towards the end. And now they've won 2 games in the NCAA tournament. Matt Painter talking about his team, where they're at and where they need to be as they move into this Sweet 16 round. This is some of what he had to say after the game the other night.
We can't go further without playing great offensively. We just can't. We have to play great. We have to execute well. We have to shoot the ball well. And that's not really pressure. That's just a fact. But we have to play great. We have to execute well. We have to shoot the ball well. And then that's not really pressure. That's just a fact. But the part of getting rebounds and getting more possessions there, we got to clean up our turnovers and keep rebounding, because both teams that are going to play in the next game that we'll face in Indy, both are very, very good teams across the board, but also a lead at rebounding the basketball.
Breaking news. Got to score and rebound if you're going to beat Houston.
Yeah, you definitely have to rebound. You got to hammer the glass. I know they've had the advantage in the first 2 games of the tournament, but this is a different beast, different level of athletes. And also, I mean, you don't want to give this Houston team extra chances because you know how it goes, KB. The rebound kick-out 3 will kill you. And Houston is one of the top 3-point shooting teams in the league and someone who can definitely change the game. So I expect this to be a tough game for Purdue, a winnable game for them, but definitely got to be on their A game. And I think Braden Smith, it starts with him.
Yeah, you have the turnover number you did against McNeese.
You're losing.
Go ahead and make the trek back up I-65. So that'll be paramount. Again, I don't expect Braden Smith to have a similar game to what he just had. And C.J. Cox will be important as a ball handler as well. And then the thing about Houston is they just throw a bunch of men at you in the front court. It's not like they got a 7-footer necessarily, but they just got a bunch of 6'9", 230-pound dudes that they'll throw at Trey Kaufman-Wren. I thought it was interesting. One thing we have seen is teams just aren't guarding Caleb first. Do we start to see more of Cam Heide or Colvin, kind of as a little bit of a smaller 4 guy? And they now again, how do those guys rebound with Houston's big dudes? Because that's just a different animal here. But I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait for the atmosphere. And I mean, what more can you want from a local regional standpoint of getting these 2 matchups? And I feel like with how we went through the first 2 rounds, we deserve some great games. I thought yesterday was probably the best day of the tournament so far. I thought the Florida-UConn game was outstanding to lead off the day. I thought the Colorado State-Maryland game, of course, you had potentially you had the game winner on one end, and then Derek Queen hits a shot over Ethan Morton on the other end. I'm hoping we get more of that. We don't have Cinderella. She's asleep. She might be dead, but
She's not in Arkansas?
we got some great teams. No, I don't think John Calipari would classify as Cinderella.
It's interesting you talk about that Maryland-Colorado State game. I thought the announcers did a great job of fleshing out the fact that in their last 18 games, I think Maryland was 14-4, and the 4 games they lost were all
that was
buzzer
another
beaters. And
that was
then
another reason why I picked them. I was like, you know what? They haven't had. I mean, they've been to all these games. Remember the Big Ten tournament?
Yeah.
Michigan has the Tyus Edney moment where they go the length of the floor to beat them, and Maryland gets the benefit of the call the other night.
So you thought they were suffering again when Colorado State hits the shot. And they're like, no. And your boy, Derek Queen, is like, give me the ball and get out of my way.
Give me the bleeping ball. And got it done off the glass. And you got people saying, oh, it's a travel. They slow it down frame by frame. He called game. And I enjoyed it. And I also think that that's a rough look if you're a referee, you make that call there. And to Kevin's point from, I believe, the first hour, no Colorado State players even reacted like it was a travel. They reacted like, man, this guy's made an incredible shot. We're going home. And that's what it was. And so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the no call. It was a hell of a shot, tough shot, and a little bit more March Madness for KB's liking because he was being a little on edge and he wasn't getting enough of it. I understand.
I was like March Madness. I mean, all we had was top 4 seeds win, right? In the opening round. I thought I saw that the average margin of victory in round 1 was the biggest ever. I don't like that. I want drama. I want chaos. I want Cinderellas. I want crazy buzzer beater moments. And again, yesterday we finally, I thought, got a little bit of that. But John Calipari's Cinderella is not the March Madness I want.
Could you imagine Steph Curry back in the day of NIL? And I know it was his last year when he just went off for Davidson. But guys like that would be identified in today's game, and they'd be brought up to some Power 5 conference
CJ
right away.
McCollum at Lehigh, Damian Lillard at Weber State. Yeah, all of them. So, again, that's kind of a bigger topic we discussed a little bit in the 8 o'clock hour of, I mean, you look at the Sweet 16, and it's chalky. It's chalky. It's, 4 conferences represented, and the ACC only has 1 team. And some of that's conference realignment, of course. I want to be, fair. Obviously, like Arizona, for example, is in it. Well, now they're a Big 12 school. That's a little bit different than you're used to in years past here, but
you're looking up. You're overlooking underdog Arkansas with all of the money they spent on their roster.
How much is their roster? How much is BYU's roster?
They started 0-5 in the SEC play, man. They really rebounded, and that's America's team right now.
It's the little engine that could. It's the great American story with John Calipari
Cal's gonna bring out the measuring stick. Okay, is it 10 feet here as we move on to the Sweet 16? He's gonna put Ollie on his shoulders.
They put on their shoes 1 foot at a time, just like the rest of y'all do. That's how that goes. So for Thursday's games, just real quickly, I'll poll you guys. Of the 4 games, which one are you looking forward to the most? Bama, BYU, Florida, Maryland, Duke, Arizona, or Texas Tech and Arkansas?
Bama, BYU. I think that has potential to be super high scoring. I was really impressed by BYU against Wisconsin. I think it was a 91-89, the final there. I mean, that is clinical. I know a lot of people have talked about Kevin Young, their coach. Again, came over from the Phoenix Suns and was bringing in this NBA background. And, again, caning catching since the decommitment from Purdue, and he ends up going to BYU. Watching them the little bit I have, I see the NBA flavor to it. I mean, they're highly skilled. So, BYU, Bama for me, just from a scoring standpoint.
I'll go Arizona, Duke, because if Caleb Love, who was at North Carolina for forever, knocks off Duke to get to the Elite Eight, that would just be so funny.
Caleb Love
fitting.
stresses me out.
I know, but this is the thing. He is the exact player that could either be the one that shoots you out of a game or shoots you into the Elite Eight. So if he gets hot at the right time, that's a game I want to see. And then plus just Duke. I mean, Cooper Flagg is must-see TV. He's the best player in college basketball.
Duke's probably been the most dominant team so far.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I know it's only 2 games. Don't overreact to 2, but I mean, they haven't been tested at all.
Yeah, and then I like the Tyrese Proctor kid, hell of a story. Kind of bouncing back for some postseason struggles last year to shoot that thing against my Illinois. So I'm curious to see what they do.
Caleb Love stressing North Carolina fans out for a couple of years, too, before he went to Arizona. He has a hot shooting night or a cold shooting night.
How long has Caleb Love been in college? He loves school, clearly.
He is the COVID typical case. Man. He's been there for a while. All right, so that's all coming up later on this week. Coming up in a moment, the Jiffy Lube stat of the day. We'll get you ready to go for the rest of your Monday as we continue on a hot Monday here at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Mark wanted a bunch of koala marches. You got those.
Maybe I want to sleep in like Mark, but I'm hoping he's enjoying his vacation down in Florida.
I saw in the YouTube chat people were like, you think Mark's listening? I'm like, I would hope not. Gosh.
Take a vacation.
Nah, yeah, be off.
I would think that Mark, he graduated to the morning show from doing overnights for many, many years. I don't know if sleeping in works for him. He probably just wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Him and James Boyd probably have a little different sleep-in thoughts.
I mean, look, I ain't got to get up and worry about what everybody else is eating or who's going to get dressed for school. It's just me. So, one day I'll get there. But until then, I appreciate the effort you all give that I am not giving at the moment.
Enjoy. You deserve it.
It's all good, though. So we've got a big weekend to talk about for college and NBA basketball, but even bigger weekend straight ahead. I mentioned with the Pacers, Kevin, 12 games remaining, a 1-game lead over the Bucks and a 2-game lead over the Pistons. They can get some stuff done here in the next week to 10 days.
Well, it's a crazy week here in the Circle City. I mean, we touched about on this earlier in the show, but before you get to Friday, and again, you'll get the open practices over at Lucas Oil on Thursday. You've got, when you think about it from a visiting schedule standpoint, and we'll see about the availability for Anthony Edwards tonight because he's questionable. But I would guess outside of Steph, this might be the biggest ticket week you have from a visiting standpoint for the Pacers all year long. I mean, I'm watching my nephew rock an Anthony Edwards jersey on Saturday night. Like, I feel like in that generation, Anthony Edwards is a big-time deal. And again, this is a Western Conference team. It's the only time we'll see Michael Grady in town coming up tonight. And then on Wednesday, you get the double whammy with LeBron and Luka, and LeBron back in the lineup. So what a week. Home games again with the T-Wolves and the Lakers Monday, Wednesday. And then things will probably shift a little bit more college and high school-wise as well. So this is one of the crazier basketball weeks of the year, particularly from a fan interest. Like, again, a little bit more of the opposition Monday and Wednesday night, but it should be appointment television certainly all week long.
Can I give you a quick little story? I talked to Highland Middle School last Friday for career
I forgot
day,
you're making the trek up there.
And the kids would lose their mind, and they did lose their minds when I told them, hey, I met LeBron James, I met Anthony Edwards. So to your point, KB, that is true. Those kids were like, you met. Craziest questions I got real quick. Number one was, have you met my glorious king, LeBron James? And I was like, I don't know if he's my glorious king, but I have met LeBron.
that was the phrasing of the question?
That was the phrasing of the question, my glorious king. Number two was, what grade is your son in? And I was like, huh? What? I had to ask that a few times. Like, I would have that son at like 16 to be their age at 13. And then the last one was, did you rizz up Caitlin Clark? Which means, did I shoot my shot? Did I try to talk to her or date her? And I was like, no.
These are the most junior high questions of all time.
I don't want to be unemployed or arrested.
Yeah.
And she's definitely not interested. So that was hilarious to me.
We should probably stop there, given what's happened in this market.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Enough said there. That's how that goes. But no. So we talk about 12 games left for the Pacers.
They're 13-12, man. Gotta love it.
So maybe you learned more than they did the other day.
Hey, man, I learned how to keep my job. I'll say that.
That's good stuff. So Minnesota tonight, the Lakers on Wednesday, and then the final 10 games, their toughest games at Oklahoma City. That's not going to be easy. At Denver, and then they play Cleveland twice, home and road in those last 10 games.
That Cleveland stretch there right at the end could be a big one because Cleveland might be resting some starters, having locked up the number one seed in the East. So that could be a big game for the Pacers if they're trying to just position themselves for the playoffs. So it's a big week, and I'm excited for it. And I think that, again, most Pacers fans just want to not be stressed out in the final minute of the game.
I think a lot of people were happy about the scene of about 2 o'clock yesterday. Kylan Talley, you dial up a little Jiffy Lube sounder here for us. So our Jiffy Lube stat of the day, it was Dan Hurley exiting stage right, and certainly had some choice words to the Baylor faithful on what they were about to witness. I love how Dan Hurley acts like it's the same officiating crew for back-to-back games.
Yeah, it's high school.
Yeah, as he was leaving. UConn saw its 13-game win streak in the tournament come to an end. That was a great game, by the way, with Florida. That was the second longest in men's tournament history, tying the 91-93 Blue Devils. The all-time record,
got to be UCLA, right?
John Wooden and company with 38 straight. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's safe.
Not going to happen in this day and age.
Don't think many
Mainly because
are
guys
gonna
like
challenge
Kareem
that.
Abdul-Jabbar probably aren't staying all 4 years, all 3 years, or whatever it was. So, yeah, safe.
That was a great game, though. UConn, Florida.
It was my first Final Four game out. I had UConn going to the Final Four.
Oh, wow. You were all over the Hurley bandwagon again.
Well, I like teams and coaches that know how to get from weekend to weekend, and that crew
I don't want to say they
that.
blew it because Walter Clayton Jr. just hit some big shots, first-team All-American type shots. But, man, I thought UConn was the better team, certainly for long stretches of that second half there. So
yeah, that was just
Florida
shot-making at the end.
Yeah.
So we continue on with the Sweet 16 coming to Indianapolis. We talk about those 4 teams that are going to travel well. Purdue, Houston, Kentucky, Tennessee. That is going to be an insane atmosphere on Friday night.
Oh, it's going to be rocking. It's going to be, as the kids say at Highland Middle School, lit. So I'm excited to see what happens. And, I think
there'll be more Kentucky fans than Purdue fans.
I was going to say, I think so, too, mainly because I think they're more of a national brand. I have friends that I grew up with.
Well, they're just different. They're just psychotic. That's all they've got.
That's true. That is true. That's the school.
Some Purdue fans might say, well, I spent a lot on the national title run. This year doesn't have the same eight. Whereas Kentucky fans are starving.
Yeah.
They're like,
true.
wait a minute.
How about the job Mark Pope did? I know we talked about John Calipari, but when you replace the guy and you have this amount of success in the first year, credit to him.
And this might be a little bit more of a Darren DeVries question, but I was reminded by these Sweet 16 teams, whether it's Mark Pope at Kentucky, how about the guy that replaced Mark Pope at BYU and Kevin Young, John Calipari at Arkansas. I feel like there's one, Dusty May at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
You can turn it around in a hurry. You can turn it around in a hurry there. So IU fans.
It sounds like another poll question, KB.
Probably don't need much to get excited
IU Sweet 16
about.
next year?
Well,
yes or no?
Probably winning a tournament game would probably be the first step. But in all seriousness, look at Darren DeVries at West Virginia. Even 9 wins to 19 with losing his best player.
Good point.
2 weeks into the season, the portal, you can reap so many benefits from it. I think you got to sprinkle in high school recruiting, and it sounds like Darren DeVries is very conscious of that as well. I think they'll be portal heavy this offseason. But even at West Virginia, he had 2 top 100 recruits, another top 150 kid. I definitely think he'll operate in that manner, but I'm reminded by this Sweet 16 that you can do it in a hurry.
Yes, you can. And, of course, Darian's son, Tucker DeVries, enters the portal with a do not contact tag. So I believe it's safe to say he's on his way to Bloomington.
Oh, I'll be contacting him when I'm buying a Tucker DeVries shirt or something like that through the NIL, funds. And so he is a really good player, though. This isn't typical, daddy ball. That kid is a bucket, and he could be definitely someone who impacts his team in a very positive way.
College Doug McDermott, Adam Morrison-y.
Yeah.
I know that's high praise, but,
he's good. I want to say he might have been I know he was at least once the MVC Player of the Year. Might have been twice.
Yeah, I think it was twice.
And
again, the thought is he'll get a medical red shirt and be available
can really
there.
Shoot it. And they need
1
shooting.
year.
We've watched IU, KB, and it's been rough with the shooting. He can shoot.
All right.
So that's a plus.
Importantly, we've talked about the Sweet 16 matchup coming up at Lucas Oil on Friday night. And Kevin has a great question he put up on the poll, and I got to find out before we get off the air where we're at. If you're an Indiana University faithful,
that is works.
Once,
if you are an IU fan, and
you are from the Chicago area.
This poll has changed in the last hour. IU fans, who are you cheering for Friday night? Kelvin Sampson or Purdue? Those are the 2 choices. Right now, Kelvin Sampson 52. We're nearing about 1,000 votes. Kelvin Sampson 52.3%. Purdue 47.7%. And probably the best answer here from Trent, you to both.
Like I said, it's like being offered a choice for dinner. Do you want liver or the chicken gizzards? Which one do you want?
My mom used to make liver, and I just had to eat it because she made it. That was the Boyd household. I don't think liver's ever going to get made.
Judging by your stature, I don't think you ate much of it.
Yes.
I did not go to bed until in 3rd grade, I did not go to bed until 11 o'clock because I was told I had to sit there until I ate the liver, which I never, ever did, and they never tried to make me eat it again.
I'm just kind of shocked that KB took a shot at me. I've been in the gym. But you know what? And you got Kylan laughing over here because it's true. Look, I've been the same size since my junior year of high school, and it probably won't change.
Hey,
I've had membership.
I see those cluster truck orders that you're going to dial up
one
for tomorrow.
day the metabolism will slow down, but today is not that day. I have a membership at the YMCA downtown, and I have never stepped foot in the weights part of that place.
They got a place downstairs in the basement here you can go every day.
And what do? I go shoot. Go shoot.
You're not asking Scotty to spot you over.
Not at all.
We can
over
get you
the
some
bench
good
rack?
protein shakes and little regimen going on. 10 minutes a day in a protein shake.
Look,
I'll get
man,
you there.
we had a wall in my high school for all the top lifters and stuff. I was up there for GPA, baby. I was a smart athlete, but not a lifting athlete.
Kevin, what are you looking forward to most on this Monday? Pacers tonight?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, 7 o'clock tonight. Again, Anthony Edwards questionable with that right thumb laceration. What is his availability? Halliburton minute count. Do you see it increase at all? Benedict Mathurin is questionable as well. But, yeah, certainly Pacers tonight.
JB?
Pacers, man. Can you win without stressing me out? So we'll see.
You? What do you think Rick? What do you think Rick feels like?
I mean, look, I guess that's why he gets paid to deal with it, because it's a lot.
All right. Thanks for joining us this morning on the Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Jeff Rickard, and Kylan Talley today, doing a great job instead of Mark Dykton, who's off on vacation somewhere. Jake Query comes your way at noon, and then JMV from 3 to 6 as always, right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.